Story 1.
Cheating wife wanted to try new size, but her secret affair ended with a body found in the woods. Donna and I tied the knot 8 years ago after graduating from college. Around the same time, we both landed good jobs and started saving up for our dream home right away. We don't have kids yet. I've been wanting them, but Donna just isn't interested in being a mom in any way. That's been the main issue in our marriage. We had our first encounter in college, and we've always been open to trying new things, though nothing too wild. Our bed life used to be active and regular until about 4 months ago. What really brought us together in college was our shared love of bird watching. We both enjoyed being outdoors, searching for new bird species. We met on a birding hike and realized we clicked. It was nice to have someone to go on adventures with who shared my interests. Our first time having closeness was in the woods, and Donna ended up loving that as her favorite spot for this. She's more of an LL Bean or Land's End kind of girl, never into fancy lingerie, preferring simple underwear like Hanes. I always found her attractive with her shoulder-length brown hair and Mediterranean complexion. She has a perfectly round figure. I had a feeling one reason Donna wasn't keen on having kids was her fear of losing her looks. I really liked Donna's thick, dark hair. She was hesitant about shaving extra body hair because she thought it might grow back thicker, but I found it charming and loved her deeply. Lately, I'd been working a lot, putting in too much overtime. Donna usually got home before me, changed, and went bird watching until sunset. She kept a detailed log of the birds she saw, even though they were usually common. She was almost obsessive about it. I'd arrive home late, exhausted, and often fell asleep on the couch while watching TV. I realized I wasn't being a good husband or companion. After a few days without closeness, I expected her to initiate, but she didn't. She seemed relieved when I didn't try to get physical. That worried me. Growing up, I had a bad temper and would lose control easily, even getting into fights. By the time I finished high school, I learned to control it. Donna didn't know about my temper, and she never did anything to push me over the edge. That's one reason I was drawn to her. My parents never brought it up to her. I adjusted my workload and schedule to have more time with Donna. I told my boss I'd taken on too much, and he understood. Now I had to fix things with my wife. I didn't suspect her of cheating, but I knew she wasn't happy with the attention I gave her. Donna, do you think we need a vacation? No, I don't think so. Maybe a short one if you can manage. I was thinking a week or two somewhere quiet and romantic. We haven't been spending much time together lately. Ryan, I don't think either of us wants to be away from work that long. Let's stick to saving for the house. Donna, I know the house is important, but we need more time together. After work, I'm too tired to do much, and weekends are full of chores. Darling, I'm happy with a short trip nearby, but a full vacation is too much for me right now. I don't think I'm ready for that. Maybe I'm just stressing too much. I want to make sure I'm doing everything to keep you happy. I'm happy, Brian. If things start going south, I'll tell you so we can fix them. We've got enough real problems without making up imaginary ones. I hope you're right. I don't want you looking elsewhere. She gave me a little smirk when I said that. Well, that was my big effort to improve my marriage. I did a lousy job. I guess I'm not any better at fixing things than I am at realizing when things are wrong. I didn't mention my new work hours. I made a weak attempt at closeness that night, but she had a headache before bed. I checked on her birding log. It seemed she was going out often, but sightings of her were rare. I have a small Honda 250 Rebel motorcycle that I adore. It's quick, quiet, and easy to handle. It's not loud and bulky like those big Harleys. It always starts up and doesn't give me any trouble. That day, I rode it to work. Donna usually gets home around 4. Around that time, I told March, my secretary, that I'd be in the archives for the rest of the day. I asked her to call me on my cell when she was leaving for home. There aren't any landline phones in the basement, and hardly anyone works down there. I left work through the back fire exit and jammed a small wedge in the door to keep it unlocked. 5 minutes later, I parked my Rebel down the street from home. It was easy to hide. My wife came home at her usual time, changed quickly, and headed to her birdwatching spot within 10 minutes. I knew where she was going, so I didn't follow too closely. 10 minutes later, her Volvo was at the Rainbow Mountain Main Trail parking area. A black BMW was nearby. Since we often visited this park, I knew the trails well. After parking my bike in the trees, I started on an alternate trail, taking my time and being cautious not to make noise. Years of birding gave me an advantage here. Every few minutes I stopped to scan ahead with my binoculars. Near the mountaintop, the trails got rough, marked but close to dangerous overhangs. It was perfect for hawk watching, especially now. You could see for miles across the valley, but it was best not to look down. I couldn't resist and paused to scan the valley with my binoculars, looking for early hawk arrivals. It was stunning. That's when I heard giggling. The woods were thick, making it easy to hide if needed, but also hard to see anyone. I focused on the faint sound I heard, though it wasn't constant, making it difficult to pinpoint. I moved forward slowly, being as quiet as possible and listening intently. Suddenly, a flash of yellow caught my eye. It was the lining of her vest. I settled into a comfortable spot with a good view and retrieved my spotting scope. While binoculars were useful, the scope provided a clearer image and had a built-in camera. I positioned myself higher than them, ensuring a clear view. By lying flat, I could remain concealed and watch for an extended period without getting tired. It was an isolated location, so they didn't need to be concerned about being stumbled upon unexpectedly. My wife's colleague was Clayton Mankey, who joined Donna's company half a year back. I crossed paths with him at a couple of work events. He seemed friendly, and I even found myself favorably disposed toward him. However, my sentiments toward him were shifting quickly. He had a pleasant wife, somewhat reserved yet appealing in her own way, and 2 young boys in elementary school. I admired his boys and hoped to have kids like them someday. Why would a man with such a perfect family be interested in messing around with my wife? He laid out a blanket while I settled in comfortably. Before long, Donna had slipped out of her jeans and underwear. Even though they were too far for me to hear clearly, I could still catch some giggles and laughter. Donna had one leg up, offering me a clear view as she pulled her knees close to her chest. She teased him. They began having closeness. I managed to snap a couple of good pictures while he continued pleasing her. It became apparent that there was nothing romantic or loving about their actions. It felt more like watching animals mate. As the shock wore off, anger began to build inside me. Instead of rushing down there in a fit of rage, I forced myself to endure it, unsure of what to do next. He didn't take long to finish, and after lying on the blanket for a few minutes, my wife gave her coworker a BJ. There was a bit more laughter, and they began dressing. The whole thing took less than an hour. Donna gave him a peck on the cheek, not like a lover, but more like a husband. He packed up the blanket while she started walking away. It seemed they thought it best to arrive and leave separately. I was out of sight, and she didn't notice me lying there. Quickly, I gathered my things and followed her down the path, keeping enough distance so she wouldn't spot me. I stopped at the overlook on Hawk Mountain, a flat rock jutting over the valley. It was a beautiful spot, but risky. As I gazed out with binoculars, Clayton appeared, walking down the path. Though I was seething inside, I remained outwardly calm. "What are you looking at?" he asked. "It's a red-tailed hawk feeding its babies at the top of that pine tree," I replied, pointing. He glanced over but couldn't see anything. "Which tree?" he inquired. "That one, filled with pine cones," I gestured. "I still can't spot it," he said, moving closer to the edge. Then, turning to me, he asked, "Have we met before?" "Yes, we have. I'm Brian Powers, Donna's her husband," I answered. His eyes widened, and his last words were, "Oh crap," as I gently nudged him over the edge. Time seemed to slow as he fell, though it was only about 4 or 5 seconds. Looking down, I saw my phone ringing. Clayton lay motionless, his leg twisted unnaturally. I observed him for a moment, intrigued as I answered the call. "Hi March, what's up?" "I'm heading out now. Will you still be downstairs?" "No, I'm almost done. I'll be back up in about 10 minutes. "All right. I left 2 letters on your desk for you to sign. They need to be sent out first thing tomorrow morning." "No problem. Thanks, March. See you tomorrow." It took me longer than expected to return to the office, but it didn't matter since March had already left. I signed one of the letters she had left before heading home. I changed out of my hiking shoes into Oxfords, tossing the boots in a dumpster a few blocks away. Donna was surprised to see me home early. They discovered Clayton's body the next day. It made the evening news, and Donna was upset by it. He didn't show up for work today. People were speculating if he was sick, but his wife mentioned he didn't come home yesterday. Why was he up on Rainbow Mountain? Was he into bird watching or something? Donna hesitated. "I don't think so." "Did you go up there after work yesterday?" I asked. She paused. "No, not yesterday. I had some laundry to do. I wonder if anyone saw anything. It's usually quiet up there during the week." "Well, I suppose I should dig out the black suit," I said casually. Donna shot me a quick glare, seeming upset that I was being a bit too casual about Clayton's death. "Sorry, honey. I know you and Clayton work together. I didn't mean to make light of his passing." That night, I noticed her quietly crying after we went to bed, but I didn't say anything. 2 days later, I was approached at work. "Hi, I'm Detective Felix Green. Do you have a moment to answer some questions?" "Sure. What can I do for you?" "Did you know Clayton Mankey?" "We worked at the same place, but we weren't close. Just met him at a few work events." "Is this about his accident on Rainbow Mountain?" "We're trying to wrap things up." Your wife and Mr. Mankey were friends, and we want to ensure there's no issue there. What relationship? They work together, that's all. Your wife told us this morning she was with Clayton on Rainbow Mountain just before his accident. That's not possible. She told me she was home doing laundry. It seems your wife has been seeing Clayton for over 3 months. Hold on, don't go making accusations about my wife. That's not right. I'm not accusing. Your wife shared this with us today. As for details, I can't discuss those with you. That's something new, and you and your wife will have to figure it out, said the detective. Are you trying to make a point or just get me riled up? Relax, Mr. Powers. We're not trying to upset you. We talked to your secretary, March Schumann, earlier, and she mentioned you spent most of Tuesday afternoon in the basement sorting through archive files, he continued. Not most of the afternoon, just about 2 hours or less, I clarified. I was in my office the rest of the time. I left early, around 5:30 or 6. The guard downstairs said you signed out around 4:45, the detective said. Sounds about right. I wasn't keeping track of time. I just wanted to get home to my wife, I replied. Your wife said you got home around 6. It only takes about 10 minutes to get there, the detective said. Did she mention I was there the rest of the evening? I asked. Relax, Mr. Powers. Everything's okay. We're just checking some details to make sure nothing's overlooked, the detective reassured me. You really didn't know about your wife and Clayton's relationship, did you? No, but I'm sure it'll be a big topic at dinner tonight. Felix Green gave me his card, excused himself, and left quietly. I was furious. I swear smoke was coming out of my ears. Of course, I knew what Detective Green told me, but hearing it from someone else was maddening. I tossed my stapler across the room as March walked in. Brian, I hope I didn't mess up, she said worriedly. Nah, you're good, March. I appreciate you answering their questions honestly, I replied. No worries, boss, I got you covered. If you need time off, just let me know. Thanks, March. I might need a few days off, I said. I didn't plan on fixing things with Donna. I just wanted to end the marriage smoothly. Thankfully, we didn't have kids, and we rented our house. Although I once wanted kids badly, now I was relieved Donna said no. It wasn't even 3, but I packed up and left. March understood as I left. We had $775,000 in our house account. I withdrew $63,000 and headed to the GM dealer down the street. 2 hours later, I drove off in a yellow Hummer, $58,000 poorer. I figured I didn't need a new house anymore. The Hummer would guzzle gas, but I didn't care. Donna stormed out when she saw the Hummer. What's that? She exclaimed. It's my new ride. Decided I needed something sportier, I replied. Are you out of your mind? How will we afford it? She demanded. No worries. Paid cash, I said casually. With what? Did you take it from our account? She pressed. Didn't see the point in having a house as a single guy, so I got the Hummer instead, I explained. We attracted attention outside. Donna grabbed my arm as we entered the house. What do you mean, single guy? You know the answer, don't you? She asked. Why would I want a house with you? Why stay? I retorted. Come on, Brian, you're talking crazy, she said, trying to reason with me. Just calm down and talk sensibly. All right, dear. Detective Green came by today and spilled the beans about your thing with Clayton Mankey. You were with him on Rainbow Mountain yesterday, yet you said you were home doing laundry. Care to explain? I didn't want to upset you. Clayton and his wife were having issues, and since he was new here, he didn't have anyone to turn to. I was just lending him an ear. Why not meet at Denny's or Starbucks instead? Why Rainbow Mountain? Clay was emotional and didn't want to break down in public. I went for coffee. Donna sat there quietly, waiting for my next move. It felt like a game. I was ticked off she was playing along. It's all nonsense, and you know it. I'm hurt that you think so little of me to try something like this. You and Clayton have been together for over 3 months, cheating on me and his wife. I'm sick of your childish lies. Grow up or shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Just because you say something doesn't make it true. There's nothing between Clayton Mankey and me except friendship. If you have proof, show it. I'm in a tight spot here. I have pictures, good ones, but if I show them, I'd have to admit I was on Rainbow Mountain when Clay died. I can't do that. I'm trying to think fast, but it's tough. I'm sweating with anger, fists clenched, veins bulging. I have some nice pictures, Donna. Would that be proof enough? Pictures of what? Where? Pictures of you two having closeness in a motel room, I said desperately. Huh? That proved you're lying. Donna froze, realizing what she had admitted. In her attempt to prove me wrong, she slipped up. She didn't finish her sentence. Her eyes glared, her lip quivered with anger. She hated losing. You son of a witch. I'm done talking about this, and you're not divorcing me. You can sleep in your fancy truck because you won't be in my bed anytime soon. Or maybe never. Fix your own dinner and leave me alone. Are we still going to the funeral together tomorrow? Forget it. It was a weird funeral because Clayton and his wife Emily weren't from around here. I don't know why she chose to bury him here instead of their hometown. Maybe she was upset about how he died and didn't want to explain it to their folks. Most of the attendees were from Donna and Clayton's office. After the service, people went by to give their condolences to the widow. When we got there, Emily sent the boys to a friend. Donna reached out her hand, but Emily stared her down. You've got some nerve showing your face here, you homewrecker. You wrecked my marriage, tore apart my family, and now you have the guts to come here and gloat. If I ever see you again, I'll tear you apart. You can count on that. Donna was speechless. She didn't know what to do. She started to say something but changed her mind and walked back to the car. Some people nearby heard the whole thing. I looked at Emily as she watched Donna walk away. She was filled with hate. I'm sorry if she did anything to upset you. I'm sure it wasn't on purpose. Grow up. She cheated on you and you're defending her. What kind of man are you? Go comfort your cheating wife. You were just getting on my nerves, and I don't need that right now. I nodded slightly and headed back to the car. Donna stayed quiet during the ride home, but once we reached the house, she let it all out. You jerk. Why did you force me to go to that stupid funeral just to embarrass me? And don't tell me it was because a lot of your work buddies were there. Why did she pick on you? Forget it. You're full of it, you big-mouthed jerk. She stormed inside and I didn't hear a peep from her the rest of the day. I ended up sleeping in the spare room after that. I wasn't interested in being intimate with her anymore, so her decision was actually a relief. Around noon the next day, I drove over to Emily M's place. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I felt like I should apologize. She was in the garage with the boys, sorting through some boxes. Hey, sorry to bother you, but I wanted to apologize for anything I might have done to upset you yesterday. She just glanced at me and kept on working. Eventually, she turned to me. Listen, I've got a lot going on right now. I need to sort out the mess my husband left behind and figure out how to move on with my life. I really don't have time for any complaints. Can I help you with something? Are you serious? Yeah, I've got some time and I don't mind lending a hand. All right, grab some of those trash bags and follow me. We headed into the house and up to the main bedroom. This is Clay's closet and this is his dresser. Take everything out and put it in the bags. Once you're done, you can take them to Goodwill. Or can you handle that? Sure can. The boys pitched in. Josh and Terry were great kids, about 8 and 6. It didn't take long before we were carrying the bags of clothes and shoes down to the Hummer. I dropped them off downtown and returned to the house. Now what? It's okay, Mr. Powers. You don't have to do anything more. You shouldn't feel obligated because of what your wife did. Do you know exactly what happened, or is it mostly guesswork? A bit of both, but I'd rather not talk about it in front of the boys. Can we discuss it later? Come by tomorrow. I need to clear out the basement and garage if you don't mind helping while we talk. The boys have a playdate with some friends from school. That sounds good, but I'll miss having the boys around. As I drove off, I felt somewhat relieved. I felt remorseful for ending Emily's husband, but I believe he deserved it. I think Emily felt the same way. I had no clue what to do about Donna. I couldn't understand why she was resisting the divorce. My wife was cooking chili when I arrived home. I thought I'd try to get her to open up a bit before dinner. Donna, given what's happened lately, do you think it might be better if we considered separating? No, not really. It seems pretty clear now that you and Clayton were having an affair. I assume you weren't happy with our arrangement. Care to explain? There's not much to say, Brian. Spending time with Clay at work and elsewhere made me realize our visions for the future didn't align. You saw me as a stay-at-home mom, but I wanted more. I didn't want to upset you by bringing it up. Brian faced a similar situation with Emily. She wanted what you wanted, and I wanted what Brian wanted. We ended up comforting each other, and things went further. He wasn't better, just different. Considering what you've said, wouldn't a divorce make sense? No way. I'm not giving up my home and comforts over a disagreement. I'm staying put. You can't kick me out. I haven't done anything to warrant it. If you won't leave, we'll just have to act like a married couple under the same roof. I'm not ready to throw in the towel. Why not, for heaven's sake? I don't want to discuss it anymore. Can we drop it? Dinner was silent. The chili seemed extra spicy, and not long after, I started feeling sick. After multiple trips to the bathroom, I began vomiting. Donna, I'm feeling really unwell. Can you take me to the emergency clinic? No way. Desperate Housewives is about to start. If your stomach hurts, take a Tums. It's more serious than that, Donna. Please? Drive yourself. You're acting like a baby. I grabbed my keys and headed to the car. My neighbor was taking out the trash and asked what was wrong. I explained, and he drove me to the hospital emergency room. The next thing I knew, I woke up with sunlight streaming through a window. I turned to the other side and saw Detective Green reading a magazine. "Good afternoon, Mr. Powers. I thought you were going to sleep all day. Why are you here? What happened? And what time is it? Hey, I'm the one asking questions. Relax and things will come back to you. Sorry if I got a bit anxious. Understandable given the circumstances, Brian. It seems like you ate some bad chili last night. Luckily, your neighbor got you here in time. They had to treat you and give you some medicine I can't pronounce. I think you had a high and low enema or something like that. What was it? They gave me the fancy name, but it was basically rat poison. That woman. What did she say? She gave us the leftover chili and it tested fine. She claims she has no clue where the poison came from. She ate the same food and was fine. We searched the house and garage but found nothing. So, what's your plan? Nothing for now." At that moment, the doctor and a nurse entered. He checked me over while the nurse took another blood sample. He said I could go home when I felt ready and handed me a paper with bland food options. I borrowed Detective Green's phone and called Emily to apologize for missing our meeting, but Felix took his phone back. "Why would your wife want to end you, Mr. Powers?" "I'm not sure. Why did she end Clayton Mankey? Do you have proof?" "No, I don't. But she was on Rainbow Mountain, and she was the last person he was with alive." "Come on, Brian. I'll give you a ride home." Donna was very apologetic when we got home, expressing regret for not being more supportive. I went to the spare room and closed the door. I didn't feel like eating any meals at home after that. The next day, I informed March that I'd be taking a sick day and asked her to help me find an apartment. Somehow, she had learned about what happened. I waited until Donna left for work, then began packing my belongings, preparing to move out quickly if needed. I was disappointed that the police couldn't do anything about the poisoning. After grabbing a quick breakfast at IHOP, I visited Emily. The boys were at school. Emily was more upset about the situation than Donna. I assured her I'd return later after dealing with some personal matters. Donna didn't want a divorce, but she clearly wished me harm. That left me with two possibilities: revenge or money. I visited my insurance agent. It might have been foolish, but shortly after our marriage I took out a $1 million life insurance policy with Donna as the beneficiary. Although the premiums were steep, the cash value had accumulated to over $166,000. I cashed it in. Then I canceled the collision and comprehensive coverage on Donna's Volvo. At work I terminated the medical and dental coverage I had on Donna through the company. While the medical insurance would remain active for 90 days, the dental coverage would end by the month's close. Additionally, I changed the beneficiary on my company insurance policies to my mother. March greeted me warmly and offered her assistance in any way she could. The bank manager informed me that Donna had already emptied out the remainder of the house fund, totaling around $112,000. After explaining the situation, he agreed to prepare everything for closing the credit cards and checking account as soon as I gave the go-ahead. I opened a new account and completed the necessary paperwork. I swung by the house later. Donna was there, dressed in her bird-watching attire. We exchanged pleasantries, but kept it cordial, not overly affectionate. She mentioned she was heading up to Rainbow Mountain for some bird-watching and relaxation. It felt like a setup, but I played along. After she left, I set off on my motorcycle, the Rebel. Her car was parked in the upper lot alongside a gray Ford Ranger. I circled around the mountain to the lower lot. Her mountain bike was chained to a tree nearby. I hid my Honda on the other side, concealed by bushes. Though I dreaded the uphill hike, it only took a few minutes. From behind a rock outcropping, I observed Donna conversing with a man carrying a small tool. It was a unique tool. She handed him a photograph and a business-sized envelope. After examining the picture, he opened the envelope and counted a substantial amount of cash. They shook hands, and Donna hurriedly walked toward my direction. I quickly ducked behind a ledge and waited until she passed. The man crouched down behind the rocks, keeping an eye on the trail from the parking lot. He was waiting for something, and I had a pretty good idea what it was. Donna anticipated me following her, assuming I'd approach from the lot where she parked her car. Going back down the hiking path was quicker than the uphill climb. When I reached the bottom, her bike was missing. I took my Honda and headed to the upper lot. The Ford was unlocked, and there was a jogging outfit on the front seat. I grabbed the registration from the glove box, a pack of matches from the center console, and the jogging pants. I twisted the pants tightly and dipped them into the Honda's gas tank. After soaking both ends, I stuffed the pants into the truck's gas tank, lit the end, and hurried away. About halfway down the mountain, I heard the explosion. I hoped she paid him enough to cover that mess. I might have broken a few traffic rules rushing home, but I had to take some back roads to avoid running into Donna. After parking the motorcycle behind the garage, I grabbed the lawn fertilizer spreader and began pushing it back and forth across the lawn. There was nothing in it, but Donna didn't know that. A few minutes later, my wife drove down the street and spotted me. She looked disappointed. Not waiting for her to speak, I jumped in first. "Hey, where's the Volvo? You left in the car and came back on the bike. What's going on?" She stumbled over her words, then her phone rang. Turning away to answer it, I couldn't catch the conversation, but whoever was on the line sounded excited. "Brian, I left the Volvo up on the mountain and decided to bike home for some exercise. I know it sounds silly, but can you give me a lift back up to get the car?" "Honey, that doesn't make any sense." "Come on, I'll drive you up there." She stayed quiet during the drive to retrieve her car, fidgeting with her fingers on her lap. She seemed really worried about something. As we approached the mountain road, we saw several fire trucks heading up. About halfway there, a police officer stopped us. "I'm sorry, folks, but there's been an accident at the top of the mountain. A truck caught fire. We can't allow anyone up there right now. My wife's car is parked up there. Can we walk up to get it?" "Wait a moment." We stayed quiet as he talked on his phone. "All right, you can hike up to the top and an officer will help you past the fire trucks to bring it down." "Don't wait for me," she said as she stepped out of the Hummer. "You can head home now. I'll be fine on my own. Thanks for the ride." I just nodded and watched her go. When she was out of sight, followed with all the activity, it was easy to keep track of her. When she reached the top, the guy she was with on the trail approached her, gesturing wildly. I couldn't hear what they said, but it was clear she was trying to calm him down. They argued for about 10 minutes before he spoke to the fire chief. As they got into the Volvo, I hurried back down to the Hummer. Maneuvering around the fire trucks would slow them down, but I needed to move fast. As I drove off, I spotted the Volvo turning the corner. Back home, I quickly left on the Honda. I visited Emily, apologizing for my lateness. She wanted to know what happened, so I gave her a watered-down version of the story. Josh and Terry were excited to see me and eagerly ordered pizza for dinner. We spent a few hours clearing things out from the basement for a yard sale. The boys worked hard without complaining. I wish they were my own. Around 9, Emily drove me back home, and I left the motorcycle at her place. Donna returned late, but I didn't ask where she had been. The next morning, while Donna showered, I took out the SIM card from her phone. After she left for work, I instructed the banker to close the accounts and credit cards. I canceled her phone service, paying a $200 fee. By the end of the day, the landline, DSL, and cable TV would be disconnected. I informed the landlord of my sudden move out and let him keep the deposits as compensation. I informed him that my wife might continue staying there, so he should reach out to her regarding a new rental agreement. The water and electricity would be shut off by the end of the week. Loading my stuff into the Hummer didn't take long, and soon I was headed to the apartment March had found. A note from March at the new place mentioned that Detective Green wanted me to give him a call. I went to the station and located his office. "Well, look who's still kicking, Mr. Powers." "What's that supposed to mean?" Felix Green chuckled, seeming to find amusement in my situation. "Do you happen to know a guy named Bobby Terrell?" "I can honestly say I've never crossed paths with him." I pulled out the registration from the Ford and handed it to him. Glancing at the document, he remarked, "Quite intriguing, doing a poor impression of Charlie Chan." We both shared a laugh. "Mr. Terrell and your wife have been chatting on the phone quite a bit lately. She called him 6 times, and he called her 4 times in the past week. Additionally, your wife withdrew $12,000 from a savings account 3 days ago. Bobby Terrell is a former convict known for his violent tendencies. We've been keeping tabs on him, so when we noticed this connection, it caught our attention. Any reason why your wife might want you out of the picture, Mr. Powers?" "There was, until I canceled a $1 million life insurance policy yesterday morning." "Doesn't she know you canceled it?" "I doubt it. Bobby's skilled at his job, and I'm impressed with how you handled the situation. He's probably been compensated already, but I'm not sure if he'll still pursue the contract without his truck. Just wanted to give you a heads up that we've had a chat with him. I made it clear to him that if anything happens to you soon, he'll be apprehended immediately. Needless to say, he wasn't too thrilled about the attention. We also suggested he'd take a break for a while. Not sure if that'll deter your wife, though. I've left the house. Not sure what more I can do." Felix reclined in his chair. "I reckon there's still something you ain't telling me, Brian. The pieces ain't fitting right. Just keep an eye out." I went straight to see Emily. She agreed to grab lunch, and I was relieved she enjoyed sushi. I tried to fill her in on the situation, but I was being vague. There was plenty I wanted to spill but couldn't. She shot me a few curious glances, and instead of clarifying, I changed the topic. Lunch dragged on. She easily persuaded me to come over for dinner that night. I apologized for being all over the place and she just chuckled it off. I felt at ease with her. The next morning, I felt ready to return to work. I had a blast the previous night with Josh and Terry. Emily and I had a big weekend planned, and I was excited about it. Funny thing, I didn't miss Donna at all. In fact, I was relieved not to have to deal with her anymore. It was just a quick drive to work and I had a grin plastered on my face as I hopped into the Hummer. Things were looking up. The big rig picked up speed smoothly, but as I started down the first hill, something felt off. The brakes weren't responding. I've seen movies where this happens, and I always thought the drivers were dumb for not stopping the car. I reached to turn the key off, but it wouldn't budge because it was in gear. You gotta be in park to turn the key off. The Hummer sped up. I calmly moved the gear lever from drive to low, causing a jolt, but it continued gaining speed. Traffic and cross streets were approaching quickly. I was going even faster now. On the left, there was a cemetery with a grassy slope rising from the street. I aimed for it and pulled the handbrake simultaneously. The Hummer spun 180 degrees and flipped over as it hit the slope. Everything went dark. For the second time in a month, I woke up in a hospital room. I heard myself moan and sensed commotion around me. A nurse quickly examined me, and there was a lot of pain. While I appreciated the attention, I also wished everyone would leave me alone. It was all so confusing. Finally, a doctor arrived, and I struggled to open my eyes. Among the flurry of white coats, I saw Emily at the end of the bed, which made me feel better. After some adjustments and checks, exhaustion overcame me. The next time I woke up, the room was quiet. I tried to avoid making noise to avoid disturbing the calmness. Slowly, I opened my eyes and saw Emily asleep in a chair beside the bed. My body hurt all over. I whispered to her, "Hey, are you awake?" She looked up and smiled, joking that she was dreaming. "Thank you for being here." "No problem," I said, closing my eyes and drifting off to sleep again. In the morning, I woke up feeling normal, but still in pain. There was a full medical team in the room, but Emily wasn't there, which surprised me. The doctors had a bunch of questions about my pain and vision, but there was no one around to answer mine. I asked about Donna, who had come to the hospital to sign admission forms but hadn't been seen since. I remained unconscious in the hospital for 2 days before waking up. Emily visited every day, and Detective Green checked on me regularly. I had several injuries, including a concussion, broken collarbone, broken left arm, and 3 broken ribs, but thankfully nothing life-threatening. The doctors were most concerned about my 2-day unconsciousness. I was starving and managed to get some soup brought to me. Felix arrived later. "I thought you were keeping an eye on things," I said. "Sorry, we didn't anticipate this." "Any idea what happened?" "Well, someone cut the brake lines on the Hummer and disabled the airbags. I went through the windshield, and the seatbelt broke 3 ribs as I was thrown out. Luckily, there wasn't a fire, but the Hummer's totaled. Honestly, I never liked it much anyway. Speaking of Donna, any idea where she is? She signed the hospital forms, but I haven't seen her since before the accident. I tried calling her, but her phone's not working." She wasn't too thrilled about it. After finishing all the paperwork, a cop escorted her home. I asked if she wanted to see you, but she said it wasn't necessary. "Well, it seems like you've seen her since." "I did." "Did she leave town?" "We went to the house and looked around. Her purse was there with a lot of cash, nearly $8,000. She left behind her driver's license, credit cards, and personal stuff. It doesn't seem like she'd leave town without taking anything. We think she's just missing." "Any clue how the Hummer got messed up?" "We're clueless." "Bobby Terrell?" "Nope." Believe it or not, Bobby Terrell was in a hospital in Philly. A couple of guys took him there and made it clear they didn't want anything bad happening to you. "Anyone you know in Philly, Brian?" "Damn, Felix, I don't know anyone in Philly." "Really? I've no idea who you're talking about." "I believe you. Gotta go now. If you need anything, just ask." "How about a guard at the door?" We chuckled a bit. As Felix left, Emily walked in. "Hey, the doc said you can leave tomorrow if you've got somewhere to go." "I told him you'd be staying with me. I got instructions on how to care for you, and a visiting nurse will come by daily. The doc will see you in a week." "All right, sounds good to me. Who's going to give me my sponge baths?" "You or the visiting nurse?" "Your call, I guess. At least both my legs work. I can use the bathroom on my own and sit up. To eat at the table like normal." The pain meds made me queasy, so I tried to stop taking them soon. Emily and the boys were great company. I enjoyed my recovery. We stayed indoors the first week, then I had her drive me by the old house. The landlord was there, wondering about renting it out since Donna was missing. We sorted out a plan to clear out our stuff. March visited me at Emily's place. She had been going to the hospital daily and had become acquainted with Emily. They got along well. While I was getting ready to return to work, I planned to stay with Emily and the boys a bit longer. My healing process went smoothly. I continued living with Emily and the boys. After about 3 months, our relationship turned from friendship to romance. I moved into the master bedroom without much fuss. Josh and Terry seemed to think it was natural. We started going out together and attending social events. I even began attending PTA meetings. The only issue was that I was still legally married to Donna. I kept in touch with Felix regularly, but there were no updates. Eventually, I decided to ask the court to declare Donna legally deceased so I could marry Emily. I took her to a cozy Italian restaurant. After enjoying a nice bottle of wine and a delicious meal, I was ready. Emily, I know it hasn't been very long for either of us, but I truly believe I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Would you consider marrying me? Is that a hypothetical question, or are you proposing? I'm proposing. Will you marry me? Yes, but there's one small hitch. What's that? You need to meet my family in Philadelphia.
Story 2.
My cheated wife's affair exposed at work, office collapse, his wife shocked. I got revenge. I am a 37-year-old man who has been married to Judy, a 32-year-old woman, for 2.5 years. It's tough to pinpoint a single moment that defines everything that has happened so far, but I believe things took a turn for the worse after that annoying phone call. I was in the living room watching football highlights I missed from the previous day when my wife's phone began to ring. Annoyed by the ringing phone disrupting the game commentary, I brought it to her in the kitchen and asked her to handle the call. Then the phone rang again, and she seemed ready to confront the caller. Since both of us worked in the corporate world, Judy had a rule of not letting work intrude on our home life. She thought it was important to separate our professional and personal lives. She maintained her privacy and encouraged me to do the same. She never answered work-related calls on weekends and preferred to handle urgent matters via email. I walked towards the kitchen exit, half expecting her to explode, but it didn't happen. She fell silent, and her expression changed. It wasn't until dinner that she revealed what the phone call was about. They're transferring us out of state, she said. Transfer? Why? Where? I inquired. As soon as those words left my mouth, I realized the situation. I had previously mentioned the company's expansion. Apparently, the board wanted to relocate employees to oversee the branch's development, she explained. I understood how transfers worked, but they typically didn't transfer married individuals without their consent. Judy hadn't requested the transfer. I suggested she decline it, but she explained that it came with a promotion, the one she had been working towards her entire career. It was becoming clear what the situation was. Judy was an ambitious woman, and I admired that about her. For the past year, she had put in a lot of effort to earn that promotion. She volunteered, worked extra hours, and made sure her team of 7 functioned smoothly. Now it was about to pay off, though not in the way we expected. Her salary would double, with numerous perks and benefits, but it was never just about the money for her. She was determined to climb the corporate ladder. What do you think I should do? She asked. All I could say was, it's not your fault, but it puts me in a difficult situation. I had 2 clear options. I could advise her to turn down the transfer, sacrificing the promotion, or I could be supportive and give her my blessing to pursue the opportunity she had worked so hard for. In my mind, I considered that long-distance marriages could work. I hadn't seen many examples, but they must exist, right? I was hopeful, but not wanting to hold her back, I told her, I'll support your decision, whichever way you choose. We can make it work. Now I deeply regret those words. She was thrilled, and in that moment, I believed I had made the right choice. I convinced myself that people maintained their marriages during long business trips, spending months away from their families and still keeping the spark alive. Looking back, she didn't give me much room to refuse. If I had given my honest opinion and asked her not to take the job, she would have considered it, but it would have come at a cost, potentially leading to the collapse of our marriage. I didn't want that. I also disliked the idea of her being so far away, but if our marriage was on the line, the lesser evil was letting her go. It seemed like the only logical choice. Faced with a similar situation again, I'm not sure I would choose differently. She spent the evening thanking me for being understanding, but I couldn't shake the irritation I felt. I realized that my wife had manipulated me into making a decision in her favor. She had baited me. I was certain. However, she seemed genuinely excited. After all the travel arrangements were made, we had a long discussion about how to make the marriage work. Naturally, we decided to call each other every day to stay involved in our daily lives. The thought of infidelity never crossed my mind because I believed Judy was too focused on her goals to consider it. Her company agreed to give her 5 days off each month. It'll work, she assured me just before boarding the plane. Little did I know, my marriage had ended at that moment. All long-distance relationships start the same way, with constant calls. I even got her a Bluetooth earpiece so we could talk while she worked. For the first 2 months, it seemed to be working. We were on the phone more, and I learned more about her life than I did when we lived together. Suddenly, it felt like I had made the right choice by prioritizing her ambition over my needs. I thought we were in a good place, at least until 2 months ago. Judy phoned one morning to cancel her trip back to Michigan. Her company's performance for the last 3 months was not good, and she needed to find more skilled people for administrative roles to make her job easier. I was fine with it, as I was on the cusp of sealing a major deal that would give me more flexibility in my work. The payout for closing the deal was worth millions, and it would allow me to spend more time with my wife. Waiting for 5 days to surprise her seemed insignificant compared to the time I could have with her. I kept the deal secret to give her a pleasant surprise, so I needed to stay focused and avoid distractions. We didn't call each other during this time, which was the longest we had gone without talking on the phone. We exchanged texts on WhatsApp, but we were both too busy for meaningful conversations. I'm sharing this story because a mutual friend recently accused me of being cold and manipulative after hearing what happened. In my view, I'm neither of those things. If anything, the big deal eventually went through and everything was about to be finalized. This deal was a game changer and would secure my family's financial future. It was with the first client I'd ever closed, making me part of the top 10% wealthiest Americans. That night, while waiting for confirmation, I fought the temptation to call her. I wanted to share the past week's events and how our lives were going to change. Instead, I planned a surprise vacation for us, including tickets, hotel, food, and sightseeing. While scrolling through WhatsApp, I saw her story with a photo of her hugging a man named Henry. He had dark hair, blue eyes, and seemed to be in his mid-30s. He was the first person she hired when she started her job, and he knew the business well. Below the picture, she captioned it as, "Dark times reveal angels." I should have suspected something was amiss and delayed telling her about the deal. I decided to fly to California to see her, and that's when I found out about her affair with Henry. I called her Michigan office to find out her location for a surprise visit, and fortunately, a mutual friend who worked as the receptionist helped keep my arrival a secret. During the flight, I imagined how Judy would react to the news of the deal. I went straight to her branch from the airport, hoping to take her out to dinner to share the news. However, I was told she hadn't shown up for work that day, so I took an Uber to the address I was given, wondering why the receptionist at her branch seemed surprised to learn that Judy was married. I didn't press for details since Judy liked to keep her personal life private. After climbing 4 flights of stairs, I stood at her apartment door with a bouquet of flowers hidden behind my back. Just as I was about to knock, I heard her moan and someone saying, "Keep going." My heart sank. It only took 5.5 months for her to cheat on me. I was consumed by anger, which threatened to overwhelm my rationality, but I made an effort to stay quiet. I left her apartment and drove back to her office to ask the receptionist not to mention my visit, and I gave her a $100 tip. I also stayed in a nearby hotel to keep an eye on her. During the week that followed, I trailed her in a rental car, and she didn't suspect a thing. She followed a pattern between work, yoga, and her apartment, making it easy for me to monitor her movements. This is how I realized she spent a lot of time with Henry, and it wasn't difficult to figure out he was the one she was having an affair with. I tried calling and messaging her during this time, but she used work as an excuse and pleaded for space to sort out her professional life. It was at that moment I decided not to let her manipulate me any longer. I prepared divorce papers and waited for her to return home with Henry. It seemed like they spent most of their time in bed because as soon as I arrived at her door, all I could hear were moans and grunts. I unlocked the door quietly and entered her bedroom, recording with my phone. It was gross to watch, but I recorded a full minute of their night out before revealing myself. At that moment, as she scrambled for clothes, I felt empowered, though it was a sad and painful experience. Her distress when I told her I'd share the video with her colleagues and family, unless she signed divorce papers, justified my actions. She begged for forgiveness, claiming she'd resign and seek therapy, but I was repulsed by her. Who wouldn't be? Every time I saw her, I couldn't shake the image of her with Henry, which made me want to vomit. Her requests were impossible, and I wouldn't entertain them. She said she'd resigned when she dropped off signed divorce papers, but I still sent the video to her parents to show them the child they raised. Regarding some comments, it seemed like she was already out of the relationship when she took the job. She likely wanted this for a while, and may have been cheating on you for some time. She manipulated you into accepting the job, leaving you no real choice. Major, life-changing decisions like that can profoundly affect a family. Now it's been 5 months since the divorce, and I wanted to update you. A while back, my wife moved to another state to oversee her company's new branch and started an affair with a CO worker, which I discovered during a surprise visit. After the divorce, I took some time to regroup and even went on a week-long vacation to the Dominican Republic, a great place, by the way. One evening, I received a Reddit notification about my initial post. When I wrote it, I was mostly venting my anger, frustration, and disgust. Surprisingly, it gained a lot of attention. While reading the comments, one stood out, written by someone who had gone through a similar situation a few years ago. He mentioned feeling miserable for not getting sufficient revenge to satisfy his spirit. It may sound strange and unpopular, as many people seemed content with me simply exposing her infidelity to her parents and getting her fired without going further. It was somewhat satisfying to witness her relationship with her parents fall apart due to that video, but aside from that, it seemed like I hadn't accomplished much. The last I heard, she was staying in a motel and working at a nightclub, which oddly suited her as a cheater. About 3 weeks after I returned from my trip to the Dominican Republic, she showed up at my door begging for my forgiveness and to take her back. It was quite entertaining watching her with puffy, bloodshot eyes from either crying or dealing with some issues. Regardless of the situation, it didn't concern me much. She was already an emotional wreck. My focus shifted to the guy she cheated on me with, Henry. I let her in, and she seemed to think I was reconsidering the divorce because she immediately started explaining her actions, claiming she never thought I'd actually go through with it. She even said she'd lost her parents' respect, and I had already punished her enough. I decided to test her by asking a question I knew she'd fail, but I wanted to be sure she didn't disappoint. When I asked her how many times it happened, she answered 1, swearing it was the truth. It was hard to believe anything she said after that. My dad used to say, it's nearly impossible to look someone in the eye and lie to them, but she proved him wrong. I didn't know exactly how many times they had been together, but I had a rough idea of when it started, and it certainly wasn't a one-time thing. I was skeptical, but if I hadn't followed her around for the first 2 weeks after arriving in Michigan and heard her moaning in her room the day I got there, I might have fallen for her lies. Her desire for a private life no longer mattered. As for Henry, I had discovered he was a married man, which infuriated me. I knew I had a chance to exact revenge on him too. I didn't need a mirror to know my acting skills were far from perfect, but she fell for it. Thinking I was considering reconciliation, I told her to give me time to think, then immediately sent the video to everyone who knew her, including her friend at the office. My first move was booking a ticket to Michigan to expose Henry's married life, using information from Judy. I rented an apartment near his place, keeping an eye on him and waiting to release the videos of his affairs with my ex-wife. Meanwhile, I watched his wife, Amy. She was stunning, with blonde hair, gray eyes, and a captivating smile. My initial plan was to seduce her and gloat to her husband, but my feelings took an unexpected turn. Amy was a kind and genuine person, and we developed a close friendship. I even started seeing less of Henry for a while. I learned that Henry had lost his job and was desperately job hunting to avoid suspicion from Amy. During our conversations, Amy also shared her marital problems, with her husband barely paying attention to her until recently. Unbeknownst to her, this information gave me the ammunition I needed. I revealed the truth to Amy and showed her the video which haunted my dreams. She was easily convinced, and we planned how she would confront Henry. Although I wasn't there to witness it, I made sure he knew I was behind his troubles. The last I heard, he was being deported. Now I can say I feel satisfied. Letters were sent to various people, including family, friends, homemakers, professionals, factory workers, doctors, lawyers, educators, priests, preachers, and even Facebook friends. The common thread among them was their connection to Amy Taylor or Josh Long. The message you're about to read is from Ben Taylor, who's Amy's husband, as well as your daughter, sister, friend, and co-worker. I realize that most of you may not know me, and I appreciate your time. I have some information about my beloved wife and her friend. Information that some of you might already be aware of or suspect. I've made the choice to eliminate all uncertainty and share what I know. I'm aware that many of you may not like it, some might even hate it, or even me. However, I'm prepared to face the consequences. Please take a look at the first attachment. There's a picture of Amy and Josh sharing a passionate kiss on the screen. The caption says, "Foreplay." This photo was taken 3 months ago at her company picnic. They believed they were discreet, but my friend, who was searching for his children, witnessed it. He took some pictures and gave them to me, thinking I might need them. That's what a good friend does. I must admit that I became a typical insecure husband after that. I needed to find out everything, even if it hurt me, and it did. It hurt our commitments to each other and to God in front of friends and family. They were broken due to lust. I hope it wasn't love. I keep tormenting myself with the question, why? Could it be because I left her alone for extended periods while the Navy SEALs and I were involved in covert CIA operations? No, wait, I never served in the military, and the only SEALs I know are the ones sunbathing in the harbor. Could it be because I left her alone for work? That can't be. I don't go on business trips, and I hardly ever work overtime. I typically get home no later than 5:30 every evening. Maybe it's because I abandoned all my hobbies, left her and the kids to themselves, and had fun on my own, missing birthdays, holidays, and anniversaries. No, that's not the case. My only hobby is making her happy. She seemed to enjoy little surprise gifts and weekend getaways, and she had to keep an eye on me to ensure I didn't go overboard on those occasions. Fortunately, we didn't have a chance to have kids. I wasn't tough on her mentally or physically. I didn't neglect her, and I always made sure she knew I loved her. I spent as much time with her as possible. It helped that she had a job, otherwise she wouldn't have had time to be with Josh. The fact that he was her boss made their secret meetings convenient during the day. I was shocked when I obtained concrete evidence. It turned out to be a bit costly, possibly even illegal, but I didn't intend to use it in court. I decided to take the matter to the court of public opinion. It's evidence of their affair. Of course, the following attachments are explicit, so please don't open them if you think they might offend you. The next two images popped up. The first showed a top-down photo of Amy looking up at Josh lovingly. The caption read, "She's really good at this." The second was a series of images of them in bed, their faces reflecting desire and happiness. Below was the caption, "What she didn't do for me." I apologize if this offends you, but I needed to remove all doubt. Why am I showing you these pictures? Because I filed for divorce. Many of her friends have asked if I'm sure about this decision, if it's a mistake, if we should see a counselor, if she's sorry, if it won't happen again, or if we should try to forget it. Her mother, whom I loved as my own, won't try to make me change my mind. Her father, whom I respect but never truly loved, will attempt to reason with me. I'm sorry for involving all of you in this situation. My strongest desire is for you to leave me alone. This is primarily between my wife and me. Well, not entirely. I didn't account for Josh. I owe an apology to his wife, Sunny. You didn't deserve to face this, or to your two children, who are, 8 and 5 now? Perhaps he'll change, and you can forgive him. It's your choice. I also apologize to his company and its senior management for involving them in the impending lawsuit. In the end, all their meetings occurred in their office. I believe the supply staff now knows why there's a couch in his office. Just a suggestion, if you're giving that couch to someone else, make sure it's thoroughly clean first. I may not be able to use these pictures, but my attorney can obtain statements from their CO workers. I highly doubt they'd take responsibility for the company. In any case, many people will have difficult times ahead. To sum it up, here's why I chose to handle it this way: to eliminate all uncertainties and not waste any more time. After all, a picture is worth 1,000 words, isn't it, Amy? Amy is about to be served with divorce papers, and it should happen any moment now. I'll try to start a new life without her. Amy, I'm sorry if I couldn't meet your needs. If, from the beginning, you had told me about your feelings for someone else and left, it would have hurt me. But I would have respected your decision. Instead, you chose to have your cake and eat it too. Well, the cake is gone. Amy, I'm pretty sure you'll regret it, or maybe not. Maybe you're relieved I found out, so you and your lover can live as you wish. It's over between us. I've moved out, taken what I needed, and everything else is yours. All communication will go through my lawyer, and I've made up my mind never to speak to you again. I don't want explanations. I don't want to know why. I don't want to hear about second chances, as I won't even consider them. Go ahead, Amy, leave me be. The entire office was shaken when Amy let out a scream and fainted at her desk upon seeing a picture of Josh with a knife through it. CO workers rushed to help her, and soon the news spread. An email containing the shocking information had been discovered by one of the administrators. Work came to a near standstill. Josh, unaware of the commotion, was startled to see the HR director standing at the door. "Is it true?" the director asked without preamble. "Is what true?" Josh replied, baffled. The director entered the room and closed the door behind him with a slam. "Is it true that you and Amy have been having an affair here in the office?" Josh turned pale, and the director could see he might faint. It was a clear confirmation. "You've been a fool. Do you realize the damage you and Amy have caused? Many of our major clients are religious charities. How do you think they'd react to the news that 2 of our senior employees engaged in inappropriate conduct on company premises during working hours?" After a brief pause, the director continued, his breath heavy. "I've just come from a meeting with senior management. The CEO called and demanded verification. He's already received calls from the Archbishop, the president of a Baptist charity, and Rabbi Fredman. Things are not looking good." He paused again and stared at Josh. "I want you out of here in 15 minutes. You are suspended pending an investigation." "No, wait, make it half an hour. As we speak, Amy is being escorted out of the office, which you haven't seen yet. Check your email for the message her husband sent," the director added as he left. Josh's hands trembled as he hit the button. What had started as a casual secret affair was now causing chaos in their lives. He had hoped it would remain fun and hidden from everyone, but their feelings for each other had intensified, leading to promises that their spouses wouldn't discover their infidelity. He realized that Sunny, Josh's wife, must be in a desperate situation. "Oh my God, Sunny!" he exclaimed loudly and quickly dialed her number. To his surprise, she answered the call, seemingly calm. Maybe she hadn't seen the email yet. Her voice, cold and emotionless, broke the silence. "Is it true?" she asked. "Is what true, sweetheart?" Josh replied, aware that he had no other option. "Josh, you have one chance to tell me the truth, just one. If you deny it, and I catch you in a lie, our conversations will be handled by lawyers. So, is it true?" The walls were closing in on him and he loved her, but he had no choice. "I'm so sorry, honey." "Yes, it's true," he confessed, but she cut him off abruptly, her voice sharp and unyielding. "I'm packing 2 suitcases with your favorite things. They'll be in the garage. Come get them while I pick up the kids from school. I'd go myself, but at least one of us has to act like the responsible adult here, especially when there are kids involved. For now, I'll tell them you had to leave for a business trip. Understand one thing, if I decide not to attempt to salvage everything, you'll be the one explaining to our kids why Dad doesn't live here anymore. They won't understand now, but they will in a few years. I hope it doesn't push them away from you. I'm leaving. Please don't attempt to reach out to me. If I decide to, I'll initiate the contact." There was a moment of silence that seemed to stretch for an eternity, then came a piercing scream. "Damn you!" she yelled before abruptly ending the call, leaving him staring at his phone like a snake before he let it slip from his grip. Almost immediately, the phone began to ring. Glancing at the caller ID that displayed Amy, he answered hesitantly. For a minute, all he heard were the sounds of crying and sniffling. Then she spoke, her voice so hushed he could barely recognize it. Josh, what are we going to do? He's my life. We were planning to start a family next year. I can't bear to lose him. I can't." For the 20th time that day, he was overwhelmed with a profound sense of sadness. What have we done? He wondered aloud. "I feel the same way about Sunny, but honestly, Amy, I don't see a happy ending for either of us. If we truly loved each other, we might embrace our freedom and be together. However, we liked each other, yet we never intended to be together. You know, our careers are over, if not now, then very soon. Sunny has kicked me out, and I'm uncertain if we'll ever be together again. I'm genuinely sorry for Ben. Do you think that if I talk to him, explaining there was no love, it might help? Or I'm willing to do that." "No," she replied resolutely. "I believe the best thing for you right now is to keep as far away from us as possible. Every time he sees you, he'll remember what we did. He's never been violent, but he's never been hurt like this. I'll speak to you later only if I believe it's a good idea." She paused briefly before adding, "No, I don't think it's a good idea. All they need to do is discover that we're communicating, and that would undermine everything we're trying to rebuild. I'm sorry it has come to this, Amy. You know, I never meant to hurt you." "I feel the same way," she replied with a sigh. "I hope things work out with Sunny. I know how much you love her. I can't believe we were ever that foolish. Goodbye, Josh, and good luck with that." She hung up, leaving Josh alone with his thoughts. As promised, Ben never spoke to Amy again. He remained uncooperative, refusing negotiations and court-mandated counseling sessions. Instead, he opted to face a contempt charge, turning up at the office to be served with the charge by the jail. Confused police officers took his statement, and after no arrest warrant was issued, the judge expressed skepticism but sent him to jail over the following weekends, releasing him on Sunday nights so he could attend work. Amy eventually canceled the counseling sessions, admitting defeat. The divorce proceedings dragged on for nearly a year. Amy still harbored a flicker of hope that Ben would return, but when her mother saw an announcement of his upcoming wedding, she gave up hope. On Ben's wedding day, Amy, overwhelmed by emotions, got drunk for the first time in 2 years. While time might not completely heal all wounds, it made the pain more bearable. Eventually, Amy began dating again. She had 2 serious relationships that ended without her sharing her past, but she finally met a man who loved her enough to let the past remain behind and focus on the future. They married, and they were happy. Amy was cautious in her interactions with other men, particularly at work. Her colleagues jokingly referred to her as a nun because she rarely attended social events and kept her conversations with men strictly work-related. 2 years after her wedding, she unexpectedly ran into Ben. He had left town after reaching a confidential settlement with her former company to avoid a court case. He was back in town for his sister's 25th wedding anniversary celebration. Amy saw him sitting on a park bench by chance. Initially, she wasn't sure it was him. He appeared thinner and had some gray hair. She considered speaking to him to finally apologize for her actions, but changed her mind when a tall woman with fiery red hair approached, holding a boy around 2 years old and a girl of about 6 or 7 years. The girl had red curls like her mother's, and the boy had dark curls. The girl leaped into Ben's lap, and the woman took the younger one in her arms. Ben rose, holding the girl, kissed the woman, and left. Amy realized that she had caught a glimpse of the future that was supposed to be hers and wiped away her tears. She returned home to prepare her husband's favorite dinner. Josh and Sunny managed to reconcile after 15 months of separation. She insisted on counseling, both individually and as a couple, and they also established a rigorous prenuptial agreement. Josh apologized so much that Sunny eventually lost her patience and warned him that one more apology would lead to her departure. Josh transformed into a different person, rarely leaving Sunny's side, and he became a devoted family man. His new job paid less than his previous one, but he received raises and bonuses for his hard work. It took him 6 years to regain his footing, and Sunny continued to work to make ends meet. Despite their reconciliation, she refused to give up her job. She occasionally went out with colleagues for drinks or attended quarterly work seminars, and her independence bothered Josh, but she was secretly pleased by it. Their life was different from the past, but they were committed to building a better future for themselves and their children. One day, Josh realized that he and Amy had been living a bed life approximately 12 times, with an average duration of 30 to 45 minutes. Considering the longest estimate, it amounted to about 9 hours, a stark contrast to the years of suffering and the devastation of Amy's marriage. Was it worth it? Absolutely not.
Story 3.
My girlfriend wanted us to open our relationship, so I pointed to the door and said, "Get out." So, like the title says, I, 43 male, my girlfriend, 36 female, asked that we open the relationship. And I just pointed her to the door. Was it too much? I strongly believe that in a monogamous relationship, when someone asks to open it, well, it's because that person saw something else out there and is ready to try instead of working on the relationship. Basically, it blindsides his or her partner. So I have been with Fran, 36 female, for the last 2.5 years, almost 2 as a couple. I thought that things were moving smoothly and was about to ask her to move in at the beginning of April, but lately, she was acting rather distant. So I decided to wait a little bit and watch. I was cheated on in the past, so I'm a little cautious with some signs. Out of nowhere, this last Friday, she asked me to open the relationship. She gave me all of her big speech, and when she ended her presentation, I asked her if she has someone in mind because it's not like we decided today and are basically going out with other persons tomorrow. Basically, I tricked her into telling me what I already knew, and yes, she has someone in mind, which means to me that either she already did it or she has it all set up. So I got up, walked around the apartment while she was trying to sell that this could be good for both of us and our relationship. By the time she ended talking, I handed her one of my sports bags with all of her stuff in it and told her to leave the spare key on the table on her way out, that we're done, and she knows why. Then I went to the couch and turned on the TV, just trying to look indifferent and save face. She was speechless for a while, about to cry, but before she could say something, I told her that I didn't want to talk about anything and she should leave. As soon as she left, I felt like crap, so unworthy, cried a little, and as of right now, I'm still mourning. My phone has been going almost nuclear with all the calls and texts I received from her, friends of both sides, about my extreme reaction over her simple request. Don't know what she told them. So now I'm sitting wondering if I really went overboard, and at the same time fighting the urge to run back to her because deep inside, even knowing my feelings for her are still there. The trust is gone, and I'm not going to spend all my time watching her movements. It's not healthy. Maybe in time, really, I don't know. Before anyone points it out, yes, I know my reaction is a pure reflection of me, not what she did or what she was about to do or could do. So, did I go overboard? Ask for an opinion, and the community will provide. The first one goes like this: all you did was fine. If she was not satisfied with the relationship, she should have handled that with you, not by planning a sex date with someone else. The op replies, thanks. My point exactly. The next piece of advice states, you are very nice to her considering what she did. Anyone who says any different is no friend of yours. The LP replies, it's not like I think I did wrong. But some of my friends were trying to patch things up because they care and telling me that I was too extreme in the hope that we could find a way back. So, even if it sounds silly, asking for perspective from unknown people helps. Another community member chimes in, handled perfectly. You did nothing wrong. She already had feelings for another person, at least sexually, so she should go have fun with him. She just doesn't get to go have that fun and have you. If people in your life don't understand that, then they can pound sand too. No, I don't think you went overboard, OP. I think these comments have a point. She already had feelings for someone else, and she was looking for an excuse to be with them while not having the guts to just leave you. She can't go on test driving other folks while still being with you. That's not how an open relationship works. If she wanted out, she should have just said that and not put you in a position that you aren't comfortable with. I mean, sure, you may have been coming from a place of insecurity, but it was unfair for her to put you in that position. Update, first of all, thanks for all of your replies and upvotes. It never crossed my mind that this post would have this much attention. I just wrote to put order in my ideas and vent a little, and with the hope that a few people would tell me if I went overboard. But I didn't expect the amount of replies I got, so many thanks for all that. Some people pointed out that maybe I went overboard, that maybe she wasn't aware of my position on the subject. I replied to some, but there were too many comments to get back to them all. So to clarify, maybe a year back approximately, we had a couple of friends in a similar situation, and for like a month. That was the main theme of conversation in our group of friends. Every time I said that, for me, it's a big no, and if one person in a relationship needs to be with other persons, well, he or she should leave. About the friends trying to mend things up, well, they weren't totally aware of the situation. Yesterday, after I posted here and with my ideas more defined, I went to see a group of them and told them my point. All of them agreed with me at different levels. Some of them wanted to let it go, others wanted to burn her at the stake. Of course, a few girls in the group pointed out that I could do things in a better way, and also there were a few questions about if I could consider giving her another chance. But for me, the main issue is not feelings. I know that I love her, but the trust is gone, and I don't want to find myself wondering all the time what she's up to. After I left, my friends talked to the other persons that weren't there, and basically the waters have calmed. If you were wondering what she is doing, really, I don't know. I got a few texts from her but haven't read them yet, and don't think I will soon. Anyway, I know it's not much, but this is all I got for now. Note, when I first joined this part of Reddit, I didn't get that people got here by posting their relationship troubles, but I do get it now. I think you're right about the trust. Her eyes have been wandering, and that can hurt. Obviously, she has her eyes on someone else and her attention outside of your relationship. Final update, my 43 million's girlfriend 36 Fahrenheit's asked to open the relationship, and I just pointed her to the door. Hello to every stranger interested in how things ended. I wasn't much on the idea of posting another update, but some people have been asking, so here it is. Finally, after listening to various friends and some Reddit users, I talked to her just to sort things out. Last Friday we met at our regular place where we take coffee. At the distance she looked great, so great that I just wanted to say F it and drag her back to my place. It took a lot of restraint to not do it. When I got close to her, I noticed her sadness, and she still had her eyes irritated from crying. We sat, and before she could say a word, I asked her to tell me the entire story and then please not leave anything out of it. I needed it, and then I would ask her a few things and also needed all the truth. The story is pretty basic. Around 2 months before she asked for the open relationship, on her girls' dancing night out, they met this exotic, good-looking guy. During the first month, he was the new flavor that all the single friends in the group were trying out, which led to the girls talking and sharing experiences. Eventually, this guy, who was having his way with all the girls around him, set his eyes on Fran and began to flirt with her, taking her to the dance floor and having fun. Well, here's when she should have stopped things, because we had an arrangement with dancing night that she would stay away from any guy because we guys are pigs, and it's pretty rare that a guy just wants to dance. Anyway, because of the excitement, she went for it, enjoyed the attention of this guy, and had a great time dancing. Looking at the timeline, this was around the time I noticed that Fran was distant. Moving forward a few weeks, her friends were sharing more intimate stories about the guy, and that got into her mind. She found herself fantasizing about doing it with him. Also, he was trying to make a move on her too, but from what she told me, she didn't go for it because she was with me. Drinks and drunken friends are bad counselors, and once the idea of opening the relationship came out, They were over 2 weeks chatting about how to convince me that because a long time ago I had threesomes and also swung a little, I should be okay with the idea of an open relationship. But the reasons in swinging are things you do as a couple and out of pure excitement, at least for me, and that was a long time ago, early 22nd. All this led to the day she asked to open the relationship. She told me that she and her friends never thought that I would end the relationship at the moment, that the worst scenario would be me getting angry and saying no, so there's no big deal in just asking. At this point, I interrupted her and told her that she should know better. We were together over 2 years and always shared my thoughts about everything with her. She agreed. At this point, I explained to her that I didn't break up with her for the question. I did it because there was already a guy, so for me that was a major trust issue. If this was some concern that came out naturally, maybe we could have worked it out, but in the worst scenario, maybe we could have found an alternative. But the way things were, it was an alert for me. We went around the topic for a while, and then I began to question her. Basically, I asked if she was intimate with him at some point. She said she wasn't. If she developed some feelings for him. No, she didn't. And lastly, if she has seen the guy again, and that was also a no. Even if that is not much, that was a small relief, but I explained to her that I can't go back to her. I need to close this for my own health. As I told her, we share a lot of friends, and I don't want to lose any of them because of this, and it wouldn't be fair to ask them to choose. So, we can behave like adults and keep things friendly. If my friends take one side, it's because they want to, not because I ask them to. She said how sorry she is, that if she could, she would undo everything, but she knew it can't be done. She was about to cry. I was also too, so it was a good moment to ask for the check and leave. I walked her to her car, opened the door for her, just a habit of mine, and she started to cry. I couldn't help but hug her. We stood there about 10 minutes. When she calmed, she got into her car and drove. I was in shock. I went home, grabbed my camping gear, and drove to the mountains and spent all weekend there to clear my mind. Early this morning, I was driving back to the city, and at that very moment, my phone grabbed a signal. It got flooded with messages from friends and family, all worried because I basically disappeared without telling anybody. I texted back to everyone, telling them that I was okay, that I went out for camping, and at that moment was driving to work. Also, I got a text from her, something along the lines that she feels that we are not over yet, and that she thinks I need more time to leave all this behind me, and she will wait in the hope of it. I haven't texted her back because I'm pretty sure I'm done, but experience has taught me to never say never. So for now, I'm going to take it easy, doing what I like and see where things take me. Well, that's it. Thanks for all your support and advice. P.S. Sorry about my English. No more reactions from the community. First up, good job standing up for yourself. The moment she got another guy in her mind, she's no longer respecting you. Do not take her back. There are plenty of good women out there that will treat you right. Well, now she can get all the attention and sexual experience with any guy she wants while being single, of course. Only vile humans wish to explore their sexual desires while still in a relationship with others. The LP replies, to be fair, the mind plays tricks on us, so having thoughts or fantasies is pretty normal. Taking action is the issue. Here is where I draw the line. I don't wish her ill or anything. At the moment, I'm just a little sad. Not gonna lie, going back had crossed my mind a lot of times, but I just play my mind the scenario of me back with her and also wondering and having the need to check her phone, and that's a big no for me. I don't believe she is vile, only we weren't on the same page. Also, I think deep inside she wasn't on the same page with her own self. Anyway, time to move forward and see what life has ahead for me. Honestly, I think you made the right choice. She decided to go for it, and she found out what that cost her. You deserve someone who wouldn't entertain such a thought. Wishing you all the best, OP. What do you think? Did OP overreact? Next up, a girlfriend exploring herself by means of another man. Girlfriend 24 Fahrenheit's cheated on me 24 millions in a long-distance relationship as she wanted to explore herself. So, I started talking to this girl back in 2021, got introduced to her because we worked in the same company. After a few weeks, I asked her out and began a relationship. We stayed in a long-distance relationship as work from home was introduced. We spent a lot of time together as we were working together, shared a great connection, had so many similar hobbies, interests, and kinks. After 1 year, she tells me that she plans to move abroad to pursue higher education, her master's, as she wasn't satisfied with her current salary, and asked me to do the same, since it'd be beneficial for our career growth and would give us an opportunity to build a life together at some place new. I agree, and we both applied for spring intake together. We got the admission, her visa got approved, but mine didn't, so I had to apply for fall intake. Ultimately, it did get approved. So, she left in December 2022, and again we continued the long-distance relationship. After 2 months, she was crying like crazy and tells me that her roommate tried to kiss her forcefully while he was drunk, and she rejected it. I told her to strictly establish boundaries so that these sorts of incidents don't happen again, or just look for another place. In the next few weeks, when things seemed fine, she asked me for my thoughts on open relationships. I should have told her no, I'm not interested in that, and I'll never be interested in it. She told me to just try and have a one-night stand and see how it feels. I got somewhat alarmed and told her no means no, and she didn't bring it up again. The thing is that we were both virgins, and we had planned about exploring the sex stuff together. So it did come as a shock as to why she's asking me to try these things when we have plans for that sort of stuff already. Then later on, everything made sense. So, this month out of nowhere, she tells me that things got physical between her and her roommate, the one who tried to kiss her forcefully while they were alone in the gym and later on ended up having sex. This continued for a few days. She told me that she just couldn't wait, and as she feels like she's getting old, she feels the need to explore herself. The sex didn't mean anything, and that she still wants to build a life with me and she loves me. I was furious. Here I am, leaving my job, family business, everything behind, spending a crap ton of money just so that we could be together, get married, and build something for us, and this is what she did to me. She says she feels very guilty about it, and she has ended everything with the roommate and is already looking for a new place where she will live by herself until I'm with her. Sorry for making this so lengthy, I'm just devastated. I don't know how to handle this. I haven't picked up her calls or replied to her texts. I feel so betrayed and have no motivation to move abroad. Everything feels like a waste and a mistake. Any suggestions on what I should do? Shall I forgive her and give her another chance, or shall I continue ignoring her? Let's see what kind of advice is offered in this scenario. First up, the relationship is over. If you want to move abroad, do it for yourself, not for her. This woman has cheated and lied to you, and she will do it again. Even if where you are moving will be right next to her, ignore her. Stop contact completely. Any money you are spending on her stops right now. She will continue to say I love you, beg and plead to you. Ignore it. None of it will help you when she destroys your trust again. Would you honestly still get married to her knowing the second you are outside of her line of sight she will sleep with another random dude and call it self-discovery? Disappear from her life and teach her the price of being disloyal to someone you care about. The Alp replies, yeah, no contact has been the case for the past 2 weeks and I never spend any money on her. She's taking care of her finances by herself. In her last text, she said that she's going to wait for me and will reach out to me once I'm there. I just ignored it. I think this relationship is done. She proved who she is, and like the comments said, the second you're out of sight, she's going to do it again. She probably has lied to you about trying to find somewhere else to live, and she's expecting you to not go. Or why else would she tell you? I wouldn't even try to move there anymore. If it's not too late, changing your plans might be a headache. But it's better than uprooting your life and moving there to be with someone who doesn't respect you. But yeah, if you're going to go, do it for yourself and not for her. What would you do? Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.
Story 4.
On Monday evening around 6:15, the doorbell rang and, to my surprise, it was my cousin Ralph. I rarely get home before midnight, so I assumed he forgot my schedule. After inviting him in, I got him a beer and we watched Monday Night Football while chatting. Ralph seemed disappointed that my wife, Lois, wasn't home, but she had called earlier to say she'd join us after work with her coworkers for a drink. I eagerly awaited her arrival. Lois and I hadn't been lovemaking for over 3 weeks, as she often claimed fatigue or headaches. Ralph left around 8 o'clock, and I stayed up, dozing off in front of the TV, a rare occurrence for me. When I woke up, Lois's car was parked outside, but she hadn't come to fetch me for bed, which struck me as odd. Finally, we were lovemaking, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she frequently found reasons to say no. It made me question my worth as her partner. After repeating this pattern for weeks, Lois asked if she felt too loose, a question that puzzled me. I assured her she was perfect for me, though I knew she wasn't being truthful. From my perspective, there was a moral dilemma. Honesty about physical compatibility was essential, but it needed to be approached delicately. Despite my love for Lois, doubts lingered even after she accepted my proposal, leaving me uncertain about the future. Returning to my attempts to awaken a slumbering Lois for some affection, her groggy voice muttered, "Oh, it's you." My disappointment at finding her asleep in bed instantly ignited into furious anger. "Who did you think it was? You miserable cow?" I exploded, unable to contain my frustration. "What's going on? Who are you with?" Storming off the bed, I snatched my shorts from the floor and stormed downstairs. Grabbing a beer, I retreated to the patio to cool off and process the tumultuous encounter. It seemed like she was interested at first, but once she realized it was me, she declined. Her tone was dismissive, like, "Great, him again." As I stared at the night sky, I questioned for the first time if her claims of spending time with friends were genuine. Doubt crept in. Then the realization hit me. How would I afford a detective to uncover her secrets? It seemed she could read my mind, yet showed no remorse. It was as if she thought, "Oh well, he knows now." Feeling restless, I opted to watch TV instead. Finding a blank tape, I popped it into the VCR and settled in to watch last week's NCIS. The video revealed everything. I paused it and quietly checked upstairs, finding Lois already asleep. Returning downstairs, I resumed the tape and witnessed my wife with my cousin Ralph in the bedroom. The camera angle suggested it was hidden in the closet, capturing their actions. The betrayal stung deeply, and questions flooded my mind about how many times this had happened. Suddenly, a stranger's voice broke the silence. "What did I do to deserve this?" Lois's panicked exclamations drew my attention. She frantically dialed a number, urging someone to answer. Seizing the phone, I confronted her, causing her to recoil in fear. "Why don't you retrieve the tape, Ralph?" I demanded, warning him to stay away from me in the future. With a vow to attend family gatherings, I vowed to cross paths with him someday, promising it would be his worst day ever. I slammed the phone down, glaring at Lois. "Thanks to you and my idiot cousin, I don't need a private investigator. You handed me all the evidence," I spat. Retrieving the tape, I kissed it and played it on the TV. Lois trembled, asking, "What will you do?" "What do you think? I'm divorcing you," I snapped. "I don't want a divorce," she pleaded. I scoffed. "Why not? You clearly don't care about me." Ordering her to leave, I hid the tape and made coffee, compiling a to-do list for the morning. Though our state lacked a no-fault divorce law, infidelity could sway the court's property division. Discovering her infidelity surprised me, but at least I hadn't added her to the house deed. As I made the list, I heard Lois leave. I pondered the rapid shift from love to hate and focused on what I could do next, grateful for the resources available online. As I headed to my room, I noticed the blank tape I had left on the TV was gone, and I smiled, hoping Lois had taken it without watching it. Back at my computer, I secured my finances, transferring most of our joint account funds to my personal savings and canceling joint credit cards, leaving my own intact. Satisfied with my efforts to protect myself, I slept soundly. The next morning, I promptly left for the bank, securing a safe deposit box in my name only, and transferring valuables from the one Lois accessed. At the office, I instructed my secretary to intercept any messages from Lois, informing her of our impending divorce. With each action, I asserted my independence, ready to face the challenges ahead with determination. Myra informed me that Alan wanted to meet me urgently upon my arrival at work. Upon reaching his office, Shirley, his assistant, directed me straight to him. "You're late at a bad time," he remarked as I entered. "You need to be on the next flight to Atlanta. Morgan's company is refusing to sign a new contract, and I need you to handle it." I expressed my hesitation, explaining my need to deal with Lois, who posed a threat to my home in my absence. Alan assured me, offering to handle the legal matters through his trusted lawyer, Bert Ellsworth, whom he recommended highly. He arranged for me to contact Ellsworth en route to the airport. With tickets reserved by Shirley, I reluctantly accepted the assignment, recognizing its importance despite my personal concerns. Rushing home, I packed and secured the house before heading to the airport. En route, I contacted Ellsworth, who provided advice and assured assistance. After navigating airport security, I checked in at the Delta counter and waited in the boarding area for my flight to Atlanta. As I mulled over the lawyer's advice, I spun a tale to Ellsworth about Ralph's threats to Lois, concocting a story to justify the restraining order. If he tries anything, I'll knock some sense into him, I falsely assured Ellsworth. I overheard Lois saying she'd love to watch, I added, layering the deceit to keep Lois at bay until my return. Despite the falsehood, I felt justified, considering Lois's own deceptions while entertaining Ralph and others. Ellsworth assured me of the restraining order's feasibility, but warned of a hearing in 10 days to finalize it. My trip to Atlanta proved fruitful as I swiftly resolved the contract issue, earning Alan's praise. He informed me of the locksmith's visit and his son-in-law's plan to safeguard the house. During my Atlanta trip, I made courtesy visits to 2 other clients before boarding flight 720 home. Checking my phone, I found multiple missed calls and voicemails, mostly from Lois. Deleting her messages, I listened to Ellsworth's urgent plea, urging me to call before matters escalated. Ellsworth's voicemail confirmed he secured a protective order that afternoon and would serve it on Lois at her workplace the next morning. Grateful to Alan for the recommendation, I thanked him. Returning home at midnight, a sheriff's deputy approached, asking for ID. Showing my driver's license, I thanked him for watching the house, assuming he was Alan's brother-in-law. He handed me a ring and keys, explaining that all locks in the house used the same key. Lois had visited twice, getting angry when denied entry. Inside, I noticed the answering machine blinking, but exhausted, I turned off the phone and slept. In the morning, I checked the answering machine and found all messages were from Lois, repeating the same plea to call her. Too late, honey, I thought. At work, Myra informed me of Lois's persistent calls, but assured me she hadn't connected with her. I thanked her, expressing gratitude for her support. Myra joked, "You say that to all the girls," as I kissed her forehead. In Alan's office, I updated him on the situation and thanked him for his help. Alan asked about my plans next. "Get on with life. Maybe find someone who'll put up with me," I replied. Alan encouraged me, saying things would improve over time. Returning to my office, I focused on work. I called Ellsworth, who confirmed the papers would be filed by 10 and offered to serve them to Lois before lunch. I agreed, and Myra invited me to lunch. We went to Tricacci's, where she offered support, knowing the challenge of divorce. "I could use some cheering up," I admitted. Myra handed me a paper, saying, "Here's today's cheer-up attempt." Glancing at it, I found a list of names. "What's this?" I asked. "A list of girls interested in you now that you're single again." Flipping through, I noticed a few surprises. Liz Fisher from accounting. Isn't she engaged? She was, but she kicked him out after catching him cheating. "Do you really think she's into me?" I asked. "I know she is. She once said she'd snatch you up if you were single," Myra replied. I scanned the list again. 7 names, and besides Mary, 2 others might catch my interest. "So, you're saying they're all interested?" "I've heard them express interest in you," she confirmed. I grinned. "I noticed your name isn't here." "I considered it, but given the circumstances, I'd rather not," she explained. "Why?" "Because besides being married, you've just begun your divorce due to your wife's cheating," she reasoned. "I figured dating a married woman wouldn't be on your mind." "You gamble? I thought you and Harold were solid," I remarked. "We were, until I found out he was cheating with his secretary. Instead of divorce, I'm opting for kindness," she admitted. "You're wrong. Even knowing you're married wouldn't stop me." "You should have put your name," I said. "You'd be perfect for me right now." "Now I know you're joking. I'm far from perfect," she laughed. "That's where you're mistaken. You have one characteristic they lack," I teased. "And what's that?" she inquired. "You're married, and they're not." "You'll have to explain that," I remarked. "Right now, I don't need an emotional connection. It'd be too easy to get involved with the 3 on your list I'm interested in. You're already engaged and seem keen on retaliation with your husband. If we got involved, it'd be strictly physical," I explained. "Are you serious?" she asked. "Absolutely," I affirmed. "Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't pursue a married woman, but if she's free, that's a different story," I clarified. "What about a long lunch then?" she suggested. "Not today, but tomorrow I'm free," I agreed. "It's a date." Hypocritical? Not at all. According to Ellsworth, once Lois received the divorce papers, we'd legally part ways. At 2:45, Lois called. Knowing she'd likely been served, I answered. "What do you need?" I asked bluntly. Why can't I get into the house? What's with the divorce? Why are my credit cards not working? And the protection order, she demanded. Just out of my mind, I replied tersely. Your cards are inactive because part of divorcing a cheating wife involves canceling her credit cards. And you can't enter the house because you're no longer living there. And I don't want you in, I explained. You need to stop this, Dave. Losing half your assets over a little fling, it meant nothing. I love only you, Lois pleaded. I see it differently. You cheated, making you a strumpet in my eyes, which is why I filed for divorce, I retorted. We should discuss this face to face, Lois insisted. Surprisingly, I agreed. Where and when? She asked. Not tonight. I've barred you from the house, I replied. You can't keep me out, she protested. Actually, I can. The house is mine, not yours. You'll retrieve your belongings with a court official present to ensure fairness, I stated firmly. Let's just talk it out, she suggested. Not here, I insisted. You're being unreasonable. Where then? Lois demanded. Tomorrow, 6 p.m., Angelina's restaurant. We'll have privacy, I proposed. Ending the call, I pondered whether Lois truly believed her excuses would sway me. Sadly, the answer was yes. Why wouldn't she think I was naive? I let her off the hook for years. That evening, I hit the landing strip lounge after work, hoping for a pick-me-up. It was open mic night, so I hoped for some laughs. I sat at the bar, and Karen greeted me. The usual, Dave? She asked. I usually get a PBR and some good company, I replied. I've got a keeper, Karen said, pouring my beer. Then a woman took the stage for stand-up comedy. A surveyor stopped by Will's farm in eastern Minnesota and announced he had some bad news. I have discovered that your farm is not in Minnesota. It is actually located in Wisconsin. Will let out a huge sigh of relief and said, That's the best news I've gotten in a while. I was just telling my wife this morning that I don't think I could stand another winter in Minnesota. She laughed and continued. The New York City Department of Education reports that only 26% of the city's 3rd through 8th graders passed the English exam. But on the other hand, they're too bad at math to realize how bad it is. 2 more comedians followed her act, and I departed feeling notably uplifted compared to my arrival. Maybe there's some truth to the old adage that laughter is the best medicine. The next day at work, as soon as I settled at my desk, Myra reminded me of our lunch date. Despite a hectic morning, Myra and I headed out for lunch at 11:30. En route to the Marriott, I asked if she truly preferred eating before our plans, to which she chuckled and quipped, Being entertained on a full stomach slows me down a tad. I checked us in under the alias Meister and Mrs. Ralph Tomlinson, a fitting nod to Lois's affection for donkeys. Once in the room, we wasted no time getting lovemaking. The remainder of the day flew by, and it was soon time to rendezvous with Lois at Angelina's. Arriving ahead of her, I secured a booth in the quietest corner, far from the dance floor. Ordering my usual, I settled in to await her arrival. When Lois showed up 5 minutes later, she looked as stunning as ever. Normally, her presence would stir certain desires in me, but the knowledge of her actions in our marriage quelled that impulse. As she sat down, she ordered her customary Cosmo, visibly irritated when I requested separate checks. Sipping my beer, I prompted, All right, Lois, you called this meeting, so what's on your mind? Honestly, Dave, you could have been more courteous given the circumstances. Lois, you're lucky I haven't torn you apart. Speak up or I'll walk out. With a sigh, she said, You're blowing things out of proportion, Dave. We don't need to divorce. I love you, always have, always will. My affair with Ralph means nothing to me. Yes, it happened, but it was just physical. Most of the time, I can't stand him. He's never posed a threat to you or our marriage. Why did you prioritize him over me if he means nothing to you? I didn't. Yes, you did. Reflect on the past 6 months. How often have you been there for me? Mostly reluctantly, doing favors. Think about the last 3 weeks. I've heard your excuses every night and stayed out of it while you've been enjoying yourself elsewhere, and you call that love, being exclusive to me? It hasn't been that brief. It certainly has. For 3 weeks, you've been avoiding me, and when you finally say, I'll be lucky to have you home, you just go straight to bed and sleep. When I tried to initiate something, you were all for it until you realized it was me. Remember that, Lois? Remember that? Oh, it's you. I'm tired. Leave me alone. That's all, Lois. Oh, you said it all. And then that tape was the last straw. Then why even tell Ralph these things? Because Ralph likes hearing it. He has some pathetic need to feel superior to you. I tell him these things to boost his ego. There's nothing wrong with you in bed, Dave. You've always satisfied me. Then why seek pleasure with other men? It's not other men, Dave. It's only Ralph. So you don't consider it cheating on me if it's just Ralph? That's not what I meant. Regardless, whether it's one man or many, enjoying another man's company while married is cheating, no matter how you spin it. Answer me this. Before seeing that tape, would you say our marriage was good? Maybe okay, but not great. I dated Ralph before we got married, and it didn't affect us. Did you entertain my idiot cousin before we tied the knot? Yes, I did. Then why marry me at all? Because I love you, Dave. I don't even like Ralph that much. Why are you enjoying yourself with him? Because he provides something you can't. Look at it this way, Dave. Think of Ralph as just assisting you with me. You're crazy if you think you can convince me of that. If that's all you want to discuss, then we're finished. I began to rise from my seat, and she interjected. You'll never persuade Dave that infidelity is acceptable. You lack any evidence to support that claim. Don't forget, I have the tape you and Ralph generously made for me. Are you certain? Absolutely, I affirmed, walking away from her. As I made my way to the door, a grin crept onto my face. Apparently, she hadn't checked the tape she took from home, unaware it was blank. Just as I reached for the car door handle, I heard the click of her heels and turned to find Lois half walking, half running in her high heels. I marveled at her speed in them. Hastening towards me, she pleaded, I need to get into the house, Dave. I need my clothes and belongings. Though I knew I was being insensitive, I felt entitled to it. Have your lawyer contact mine to arrange it, I replied, sliding into the car. Rolling down the window, I bid, Goodbye, Lois, and drove off as she called out, Wait, Dave, just a minute. I could have allowed her to follow me home and retrieve her things without inconvenience. It wouldn't have inconvenienced me. But at that moment, I was thinking, forget her. If she didn't already have a lawyer, it would take her a day or two to find one. Since it was Thursday, I wagered the soonest she could secure one would be Monday, with another day needed to organize her return to the house. By then, I'd have packed all her belongings in garbage bags, showing little care in the process. If I were lucky, she'd have to take everything to the dry cleaner or laundromat before using them. Was I a bit resentful toward Lois? Not really. My relationship with Lois was smooth sailing. I slept soundly that night. On Friday, I had another lengthy lunch with Myra. As a particularly busy period drew to a close, Myra inquired about my weekend plans. Upon learning I had none, she proposed, Would you like to spend the weekend with me? I'd love to, but how will you keep it from your husband? He's going fishing this weekend. He packed up this morning and will leave straight from work. I'm at your disposal from now until noon on Sunday, if you need me, that is. Silly girl, let's see. Dinner and dancing tonight, then play at home. Saturday morning wake up and more playtime. Dinner and dancing Saturday night, followed by more play at home. Sunday morning, play until noon, then brunch. Sound good? Sounds great, but how about we skip the dancing and focus on playing? That won't do. Your energy never seems to fade, and mine needs a break sometimes. All right then, your plan it is. After returning to work, I informed her I'd pick her up at 7. Pack for the weekend, I instructed, since you won't be returning until Sunday. Upon arriving home, I discovered Lois hadn't wasted any time searching for a lawyer. Upon entering the bedroom to change, I noticed part of Lois's dressing room was bare. Most of her belongings were gone. Curious, I investigated how it had happened and found a broken window in the family room facing the patio. Though I couldn't prove Lois was responsible, I derived some satisfaction from spotting blood on the glass shards, indicating she might have injured herself climbing in. I located a glass company in the Yellow Pages, scheduled an appointment for the next day, and decided to leave the mess until morning. With my decision made, I headed upstairs, showered, and dressed for my outing with Myra. We dined, danced, and indulged in drinks. Although we retired at 11, sleep eluded us until 3, leaving me utterly exhausted. After Myra had her fill of me, I set my watch for 9, anticipating the arrival of the glazier between 10 and 12. However, Myra woke me at 7:20 in a delightful manner. While awaiting the glazier, I tidied up the broken glass, completing just as the glazier arrived at 10:10. By 10:40, the repairs were finished, and by 11, Myra and I were enjoying a late breakfast at Tricacci's. Following our meal, I inquired what Myra would like to do next. Just relax and cuddle. That's all I want, she replied, and that's precisely what we did. Buoyed by our spirits, by 5, we opted to order pizza and continue our leisurely day. We decided against closeness on a full stomach, opting instead to lounge on the couch and watch TV for an hour or two. However, our TV viewing was abruptly interrupted mid-program. Sunday morning dawned, bringing with it the realization that I would have to return Myra to her husband. This realization sparked a thought which I voiced over pancakes at the village inn. "How much time do we have left?" I inquired. "What do you mean?" Myra responded. "When are you planning to leave me?" I clarified. "Why do you think I'll leave you?" Myra questioned. "From what you mentioned about flirting with your husband," I explained. "I was under the impression you were just casually flirting, not involved in a serious relationship," I added. "Maybe, but it wasn't my intention. Typically, the men I encountered became possessive, wanting me to leave Harold for them. However, none of them could match Harold's lifestyle," Myra disclosed. "I couldn't fathom trading a comfortable home in a nice neighborhood for a one-bedroom apartment, wondering if we could afford bills each month. Plus, they weren't any better in bed than Harold, and they were messy," she continued. "And I always wore my wedding rings," Myra admitted. "I fail to see the logic. You sought out attention knowing they were aware of your marital status," I remarked. "True, but I wasn't seeking a replacement for Harold. I just wanted retribution. Holding on to them, if they were skilled in bed, didn't imply emotional attachment," Myra confessed. "Admit it." "If they started stalking me knowing I was married, do you think I could ever trust them if I made the relationship permanent? So I'm just another sleaze? Don't be ridiculous." "Of course not. I've been working for you for over 5 years now, and in all that time, you've never once flirted with me. Consider what brought us here. Love. I pretty much gave you an open invitation. You made it clear that you'd never pursue a married woman, and you didn't. I offered, and you had the good sense not to refuse. If anything, I'll be the one to end it. I can assure you of that. If it does happen, it won't be anytime soon." "Do we have time for one more before I have to take you home?" She grinned, and we drove off. As I retired Sunday night, I felt like one of the happiest men in the state, maybe even the neighborhood. On my Monday commute to work, I reflected on my relationship with Myra and realized it couldn't continue, at least not in the same manner as over the weekend. I was suing Lois for infidelity, and if she hired a competent lawyer, one of their first moves would be to find something on me to use as leverage. If I got caught with Myra, Lois could counter, but I wasn't willing to go without her for the duration of the divorce proceedings. I had already endured enough deprivation while married to my unfaithful wife. Upon arriving at work, I summoned Myra to my office, explaining the dilemma and seeking her input. "I have a couple of ideas, but I'm not sure if they're feasible," she began. "Tell me, and let's see," I encouraged. "You have 3 uncomfortable customer chairs here. You need to replace them with a comfortable couch so visitors can sit comfortably," she proposed. "I can arrange that," I agreed. "Then you often stay late at work, so naturally I'll need to stay late to assist you. After we install the new couch, you'll leave, and I'll wait for 10 or 15 minutes to allow anyone watching you to follow, ensuring they won't see me leave," she suggested. "That should work," I concluded. "Here's another option. I'll leave for lunch. Before you head to the hotel, book a room and call me with the room number. Upon arrival, take the elevator to the 2nd floor where the conference rooms are, then use the stairs to reach the designated floor. However, we can't do this often. Attending too many conferences may arouse suspicion. To ensure I'm seen at a conference, hang a Do Not Disturb sign on one of the conference room doors before anyone arrives via the stairs. But ultimately, they'll need to witness us together. If we arrive and depart separately, we'll be fine." I instructed Myra to schedule the conference for the next day and then sent her off to work. With a busy day, I didn't get around to ordering the couch until around 4. Without waiting for approval, I ordered and paid for it myself. At 5, I called Myra into my office and informed her she needed to inform her husband that she would be working late on Thursday. "The couch will be delivered around noon." "How did you arrange everything with Ahern and accounting so quickly?" she inquired. "I handled it myself. No need to involve them," I replied. Seeing no one around, Myra kissed me as the door to the office was open. Then she remarked, "I was hoping we wouldn't have to wait until Thursday." "Don't forget about tomorrow's conference with the Ajax guys," I reminded her. "Shoot! How did I forget?" she exclaimed. Despite the encounter with Lois parked in the driveway when I arrived home, I remained in good spirits until I spotted her. Positioning her car in the middle of the driveway prevented me from accessing the garage. To allow her to leave, I parked accordingly. As I stepped out of my car, she approached me, stating, "We need to talk, Dave. Things are escalating." I brushed past her, heading to her car. Opening the door, I reached for her purse, tipping its contents onto the seat. After counting the money and pocketing it, I tossed the purse back atop the pile. "You still owe me $14 for the broken window. We have nothing more to discuss," I asserted. "Dave, I love you, and I don't want a divorce. We can work through this. It doesn't have to end," Lois pleaded. "No, Lois, there's no way we can salvage this, especially after learning you betrayed me before we even married. It's over between us," I declared. Lois was deflated. "I had hoped you'd see reason, but I knew deep down you wouldn't. If you're set on divorce, I'll fight you. I won't accept infidelity. I know the laws here, and I won't settle for a 70-30 property split," she warned. "I'm sorry you won't hold yourself accountable for what you did to me, but infidelity remains a fact. You'll have to prove it, Dave, and you can't. It'll be your word against mine, and I'll deny it vehemently. I'll claim you're attempting to swindle me out of my fair share of our property. You might even face consequences for it. You seem to forget I have visual evidence of your infidelity with my cousin." "No, Dave, I haven't forgotten. I grabbed that tape as I left the house and promptly destroyed it. It's your word against mine, and without proof, you'll lose." "You destroyed it. Ralph will never forgive you. He needed that tape desperately. He might even lose interest in you for destroying it. Can you grasp that I don't care about Ralph? Yes, I desired what he offered, but I don't require it. I need you." I shrugged, stating, "You still owe me $14 for the window," then distanced myself from her and entered the house. She persisted relentlessly. She pounded on the door and rang the bell for a solid 10 minutes before finally departing. Watching her retreat down the driveway, I smirked. Clearly, she destroyed the tape without verifying its contents. A surprise awaited her. I wanted her to engage a lawyer and contest the divorce. I desired her to accrue debt, spend thousands on legal fees, only to discover I still possessed the tape, rendering her expenditures futile. I slept peacefully that night. My Tuesday conference call with the Ajax representatives went smoothly, leaving me in high spirits upon returning home from work. Wednesday wasn't too shabby either, especially when Myra suggested a quick encounter on my desk at day's end. After ensuring everyone had left, I acquiesced. Upon completion, I reminded her of her late shift on Thursday. En route home, I opted to stop by Landing Strip Lounge, my favorite restaurant. Unbeknownst to me, it was hosting an open mic night, making it a challenge to find a vacant seat. Eventually, I secured a spot at the bar. I happened to be present when Bobby Denton passed the microphone to a trailer repair mechanic employed by Triple T Sales and Service in Franktown. This individual was quite intelligent, holding degrees in both electrical and mechanical engineering. One day, while driving home, he heard a radio commercial that struck him as a blatant falsehood. Contemplating this, he sketched a plan for a lying robot upon returning home. After refining his blueprint, he constructed the robot in his basement workshop over a span of 6 weeks. When completed, he tested it in his living room, coincidentally when his 14-year-old son arrived home 2 hours tardy. Inquiring about the delay, the man's son claimed he had lost track of time while playing cards with friends. With a lull in the proceedings, I finished my beer and departed for home. The following day brought 2 positive developments. Firstly, my lawyer informed me that Lois's legal counsel had reached out, indicating her intent to contest the divorce. This news brought a smile to my face. Secondly, my black leather couch was delivered. Opting for leather was strategic, anticipating the inevitable stains it would endure. This foresight proved beneficial as Myra and I left a few stains on it later that afternoon. The subsequent weeks flew by, marked by frequent encounters with Myra, mostly on the couch after work. However, on 3 occasions, we utilized the conference room, acknowledging the superior comfort of the bed over the couch. During this period, Lois called me almost daily, expressing her need for me and insisting that I couldn't prevail. She suggested we accept the past, move forward together, and forget everything. Although I could have ended these calls by changing my phone numbers, I derived a perverse satisfaction from informing her she was wasting her time. Meanwhile, Ellsworth and Lois's lawyer were occupied with legal matters. I hoped Myra's lawyer billed by the hour, as I had negotiated a flat fee with Ellsworth, indifferent to the duration of the proceedings. Ellsworth was aware of the tape's existence, yet he never disclosed it to Lois's attorney. They negotiated with the other attorney, proposing that if I changed the grounds for divorce from infidelity to irreconcilable differences and agreed to an equal property division, Lois would cease her resistance. I instructed Ellsworth to decrease the split from 70/30ths to 65/35ths, knowing she wouldn't accept. Ellsworth informed me that he must notify the opposing party about the tapes before presenting them to the judge, as failing to settle beforehand would anger the judge. I authorized Ellsworth to use his discretion, as that was what I was compensating him for, right? It seemed Lois had someone tailing me, or at least that was my suspicion. I suddenly noticed a stranger nearby, seemingly appearing wherever I went. It might have been my paranoia, but then again, maybe not. Another week elapsed, and Ellsworth called. Lois and her attorney wished to meet. I instructed him to arrange it and inform me of the time. He later notified me, Friday at 10 in the morning. I arrived early at 9:30 and discussed matters with Bert. We decided to have the tape present at the meeting, but I wanted to toy with Lois one last time. The meeting commenced with the usual banter. Lois denied the infidelity accusations, claiming I was being unreasonable. Then I interjected, reminding her of the tape she and my cousin made. "No, I don't," she retorted confidently, aware of the lack of evidence to support my claim. "I'll make you a deal, Lois. If you sign the papers now, I'll agree to a 60-40 split. But you have only 2 minutes to decide. If not, I'll leave it to the judge." "I won't agree, Dave. You have no proof," Lois replied stubbornly. "Sure, Lois, I have a tape of you and Ralph," I stated confidently, anticipating her reaction. And just as I hoped, she became enraged, blurting out, "Damn it, Dave, I already told you I destroyed the damn tape." "Oh, so you admit to infidelity and destroying evidence?" I remarked, watching her eyes widen in realization. "No, that's not what I meant," she backtracked. "Never mind, Lois, I offered leniency, but your stubbornness, as usual, led you to reject it. Let the courts decide." Lois's lawyer then interjected, "If you indeed possess evidence, you better reveal it now." I gestured to Ellsworth, and as he moved to press the play button on the TV VCR positioned at the table's end, I stated firmly, "This is your final opportunity, Lois. I'm willing to settle for a 60-40 split, but once he presses play, the offer is rescinded and we proceed to court. Screw you, Dave. You've got nothing on me." With that, Bert pressed play, and I rose, declaring, "See you in court, Lois," before exiting the room. Before I even left the building, my phone rang. It was Bert. "They're interested in making a deal." "No thanks. I offered her an out, but she refused, so full steam ahead." My actions only escalated Lois's phone calls. I disconnected the house phone, and Myra knew not to pass on Lois's calls to me, leaving my cell phone as the only means of contact. I kept the same number to toy with Lois, finding amusement in the numerous unanswered calls from her. As for my personal life, Myra was providing more than enough excitement. 3 days after the meeting with Lois and the attorneys, Myra approached me saying, "We've got a problem, a major one." I panicked, fearing her husband had discovered our affair. "How serious is it?" I inquired. "Pretty serious. Harold needs to fly back to Ohio for some issues regarding his parents' inheritance. He'll be gone for a week." "So, what's the dilemma? How do we manage a week together?" I pondered for a moment before suggesting, "Simple. You leave work half an hour before me, drive to my place, park a block away, ensure all curtains are shut tight, and when I return home, we'll have our time. In the mornings, I'll leave for work, potentially drawing any pursuers with me. After waiting a brief period to ensure I'm in the clear, you'll head to work. We'll repeat this until the weekend, when we'll devise another plan. What about a weekend plan like this? I keep up the routine, but on Friday evening when you return home, we stay indoors the entire weekend. Do you think you can handle spending 2.5 days with me?" "What I'm unsure of, dear, is whether I can survive 2.5 days with you. We won't know until we try." So we went through with our plan, and I made it through the weekend. However, once it was over, I found myself feeling a bit down, especially when Myra returned home to reunite with her husband. I had grown accustomed to Myra's presence. She provided good company, and we got along well. Yet, deep down, I knew that once my divorce was finalized, I would be seeking a replacement for Lois. I valued the idea of marriage and longed for a fulfilling relationship where I could fall asleep in the arms of a loving partner who would be there in the morning. While I could envision having that with Myra, she never explicitly indicated that she would leave Harold. I sensed that she was content with him, aside from his occasional mistreatment, and was prepared to remain with him as long as she could reciprocate. Recalling the list that had ignited our affair, I mentally reviewed it. There were 3 men on that list, none of whom seemed suitable to be my spouse. 2 of them smoked, a habit I detested due to growing up in a household where both my parents were heavy smokers. Liz, from accounting, the only non-smoker among them, was indeed attractive, but I considered her too young for me. Our age gap suggested we might lack sufficient common ground. A brief encounter in her office, where she was listening to rap music, a genre I disliked, reinforced this belief. While entertaining the idea of a fling with Liz might be tempting, I doubted we could sustain a lasting relationship. These reflections occupied my mind during my Monday morning commute. Once at work, I found myself swamped with tasks, too preoccupied to dwell on personal matters. In fact, I was so occupied that I had to decline when Myra popped her head into my office asking if we were going to lunch. Right before I wrapped up my workday, Bert Ellsworth called. He mentioned that Lois was eager to resolve the matter. I understand your stance on bargaining, but offering her a 60/40ths deal to sign immediately might be wise. Infidelity typically influences asset distribution, but with 2 out of 7 divorce judges being women, they often lean towards a 50-50 split, regardless of grounds. We might end up with one of those judges. Settling now could be in your best interest. After about 30 seconds of contemplation, I instructed him to propose a 65-35 TRSS deal and gauge her response. During the downtime, Myra entered my office, requesting some time on the couch since she missed her extended lunch break. I granted her request. The following morning at 10 o'clock, Ellsworth called to report that Lois had agreed to the 65-35 offer. He mentioned she would arrive on Wednesday at 5 to sign the papers and requested a brief meeting with me. Although I saw little purpose in it beyond giving me another chance to confront her, I wanted to conclude matters swiftly to avoid further inconvenience to Myra. I informed Bert that I'd be available at 2 o'clock to accommodate her request. We convened in the conference room, and I took a seat, waiting for her to speak her piece. Recognizing my silence, she took a deep breath and expressed, "I don't want this, Dave. I know you may doubt it, but I love you. Perhaps we can find a way to reconcile and stay together." "Absolutely not, Lois. Not after discovering the extent of your infidelity. Let me be frank. If it were a fleeting affair, I might consider reconciliation. Suppose you had a series of regrettable encounters before our marriage, followed by years of fidelity until one resurfaced, leading to a brief affair. I might have been able to forgive that, but a long-standing affair before we even committed to each other? No chance whatsoever. Lois, there's no resolving this. You lavish love on the man you claim to barely like, while the one you profess to love can go weeks to months without it. It's futile, Lois. It just is. Is that all? Can't you please give us a chance, Dave? I can't, Lois. I'll never trust you again, and I refuse to live like this. I rose and made my way to the door. Pausing, I added, "You're an attractive woman, Lois, so I doubt you'll be single for long. If you find someone, I hope he treats you as poorly as you've treated me." With that, I exited the room and headed to the landing strip. Taking a seat at the bar, Karen served me a PBR and asked, "Where have you been, handsome?" "Dealing with a divorce and not in a very social mood," I replied. "I'd stop in for a beer or two and unwind." "So, does that mean I'll have a chance to charm you now?" she teased. "I thought you were content with your boyfriend all these years." "Huh, I was, until I realized he wasn't what I thought." Deciding I'd had enough, I signaled for the bill. As Karen returned with my change, she flashed a smile and said, "When your divorce is finalized, don't forget about me, all right?" "I can manage that. Take care," I replied, leaving in high spirits. Karen's interest in me was unexpected. Once Lois signed the papers, it was all settled. Despite awaiting the final decision, I felt liberated, free from the fear of being watched. Myra and I could abandon our clandestine meetings. Around 10, she entered my office asking about lunch plans. "Yes, I'll leave around 11:20 and book a room," I informed her. However, she responded, "That won't be necessary anymore. Lois signed the papers yesterday, so we don't need to worry about avoiding something that might not have happened." At 11:30, we left for the Marriott. As the door to room 403 shut behind us, we leaped onto the bed. While we dressed, Myra posed a question. "What now?" "What do you mean?" I countered. "I mean, now that you're free." This took me by surprise, but I quickly formulated a response. "As long as you want me, honey, I'll stick around. But eventually, I'll seek a wife. I enjoyed being married." "What qualities would you seek in a wife?" "She should be attractive, love me, have the strength to tolerate me, and be a decent cook." "I can cook," she offered. I paused, realizing her true intention. In response, I stated, "If you meet the criteria, I'll prioritize your application. But there's a catch. I won't engage in bigamy." She looked puzzled for a moment until it clicked. She beamed. "Don't worry, love. Harold's days are numbered." Then, a concern crossed my mind, evident in my changed expression. Myra noticed and inquired, "What's wrong, kid? What's on your mind?" We've reached a point where we don't need to hide things from Lois, but now we have to conceal matters from Harold while you navigate your divorce proceedings. I may be mistaken, but I doubt it's necessary. I'll present him with a choice: infidelity or irreconcilable differences. I possess ample evidence of his infidelity. If I threaten to expose him, he'll likely opt for irreconcilable differences to protect his career aspirations. Harold aspires to climb the corporate ladder, aiming for a vice presidential role. However, the CEO and several board members are devout Christians. His chances may diminish if his affairs come to light. While it might inconvenience me for a week or two in a motel, we can handle that, can't we? Myra's strategy unfolded as planned, and she wasted no time executing it. Following my suggestion, she arranged a meeting with Ellsworth for Friday. She requested Bert to draft 2 sets of documents, one citing infidelity and the other irreconcilable differences. Just before the bank closed on Saturday at 11:45, she withdrew half of the checking account, all her savings, and 4 of the 6 CDs from the safe deposit box. Returning home, she gathered Harold's belongings he had left in pursuit of gold, loaded them into her car, and checked into a motel. By 3 o'clock, she returned, prepared dinner, uncorked a bottle of wine, and while dining with Harold, revealed her awareness of his affairs, backed by PI reports on 3 of them. She asserted she had reached her breaking point and intended to divorce him. She detailed her financial actions, offering to relinquish her share of the house, which exceeded her bank loan. Presenting him with divorce papers, she outlined his options and set a deadline of 10 o'clock Monday morning for his decision. Departing with a smile, she left the dirty dishes for Harold. As anticipated, Harold phoned her on her cell, opting for irreconcilable differences. On Wednesday, they convened in Bert's office, where Harold signed the documents. Myra opted to remain at the motel over the weekend to let the situation settle. Later, she moved in with me, and we planned to cohabit until our divorces were finalized, then wed. However, this posed a dilemma. Myra excelled in her role and wished to retain her job. Yet, our company prohibited relatives from working together. While we could both stay, one of us would need to relocate. Unfortunately, the nearest facility for transfer was 90 miles away, impractical for us. Hence, we decided to conceal our marriage. Myra retained her surname, preserving her health insurance until, if ever, we were discovered. And then Myra would resign and seek another job if she desired. She didn't really need to work, considering my substantial compensation. She checked out of the motel on Sunday and moved in with me by 3 p.m. The following 2 months passed swiftly without incident, and I began to unwind and lower my defenses. A significant error. Lois called once or twice a week, and I typically answered to dismiss her, deriving satisfaction from doing so. I should have anticipated her persistence. On a Wednesday evening, Myra and I were at the landing strip, enjoying a drink or 3. We frequented the place occasionally, not necessarily on Wednesdays, as it had always been my preferred spot. However, we were there that night to support one of the accounting girls, trying her hand at performing. We applauded Shelley's effort, but both Myra and I agreed she was better suited to her job than show business. Her routine began with a scenario where a man engrossed in reading the newspaper gets struck on the head by his wife with a frying pan. "Why did you do that?" he inquired. "For the paper I found in your pocket with Jenny's name," she retorted. He explained that Jenny was the name of a horse he bet on at the races. Apologizing, she resumed her chores. Days later, as the man watched TV, his wife punched him again, this time with a larger pan, causing him to lose consciousness. Upon awakening, he asked why. "Your horse was calling," she quipped. After some laughter, the storyteller continued. An elderly couple, despite mutual disdain, remained married for years. Their arguments often resounded late into the night, with the old man threatening to haunt his wife after pass-away, which frightened the neighbors, who suspected him of practicing black magic due to odd incidents. Upon his demise from a heart attack at 85, his funeral featured a closed casket. At the burial, neighbors expressed concern to his widow about his potential return. She scoffed, asserting she'd buried him upside down, confident he wouldn't ask for directions upon resurrection. "You keep your damn hands off my man, you damn strumpet!" Lois's voice cut through the air, dripping with venom. I whirled around to see her pouring a drink over Myra's head. Before I could react, Myra retaliated, splashing her own drink into Lois's face. Lois stumbled to the floor, and I wasted no time grabbing Myra and pulling her out of there. As I started drying us off with some rags from my trunk, Lois stumbled out of the door, her footing unsteady from a blow to her nose. And who was there to help her? None other than my prick cousin Ralph. I dropped the rags and yelled, "You rotten son of a cow!" and launched myself at him. He let go of Lois, who collapsed, and then he bolted. I chased him for 3 blocks before giving up and heading back to the strip parking lot. When I returned, I found Myra pinning Lois against the car's fender. Myra was screaming at her, "Get it into your stupid head, you stupid cow." "I didn't steal it from you. You threw it away, and I was lucky enough to catch it." As I approached, Myra backed away and said, "Let's get out of here. Get in the car. I need to go inside and straighten things out with Joe." I found him inside, and he assured me there was no damage. He even joked, "Next time do it during intermission so the customers have something to look at when no one is on the mic." Back outside, I saw Lois waiting for me at the entrance, but Myra was already in the car. Lois stepped towards me, pleading, "Please, Dave, give up the divorce. I'm dying, baby. I need you. I love you, and I know we can work this out." "You must be the stupidest human being on the planet, Lois," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "Here you are, professing your love for me while your current date is the reason behind your divorce. And to top it off, you're not even discreet about it. You need to let it go, Lois. The only feelings I have for you are hate and disgust. Leave me alone." With that, I walked around her, got into my car, and drove away. Both divorces were finalized. I proposed to Myra, but she surprised me by saying, "Ask me again in a year, baby. Let's see if we're truly right for each other after living together for a while." I waited a year and proposed again, and this time she said yes. We opted for a civil ceremony at the Justice of the Peace, as we didn't want another big wedding. Lois ended up marrying Ralph, but their marriage didn't last long. It turned out Ralph had been cheating on her with several other women, one of whom gave him a disease that he passed on to Lois. While cheating on me seemed acceptable to her, being cheated on was a different story entirely. She couldn't tolerate it. 6 years after my marriage to Myra, Ralph made the mistake of attending a wedding that I also happened to be at. I kept my long-standing promise to him. It may be a while before I receive another invitation to a family celebration.
Story 5.
Mark Stone pulled into his driveway. The familiar crunch of gravel under tires a small comfort after a long day overseeing construction projects. The 2-story suburban New Jersey home loomed before him, windows dark save for the soft glow from the living room. He cut the engine, grabbed his worn leather briefcase, and headed inside. The moment he stepped through the front door, the tension hit him like a physical force. Courtney, his wife of 15 years, sat curled up on the couch, her face illuminated by the harsh glow of her smartphone. She didn't look up as he entered. "Hey," Mark said, loosening his tie. "How was your day?" Courtney's eyes flicked up briefly, a forced smile crossing her lips. "Fine. Busy. How about you?" Mark studied her, noting the slight flush on her cheeks, the way she angled the phone away from him. "Same old. We're still having issues with that new subcontractor on the Millbrook project." He paused, waiting for her to engage to ask for details like she used to. Instead, she just nodded absently, her thumb scrolling rapidly across the screen. "Who are you texting?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Courtney's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "What?" Mark gestured to the phone. "You've been glued to that thing lately. Just wondering who's so interesting." "It's work stuff," Courtney said quickly, too quickly. She locked the screen and set the phone face down on the coffee table. You know how it is with freelance photography. Always hustling for the next gig. The lie hung heavy in the air between them. Mark felt his jaw clench, fought to keep his voice even. "Right? Of course." He turned, heading for the stairs to check on their daughter, Allison. Courtney's voice stopped him. "Mark, wait." He looked back to see her standing now, arms crossed defensively. "What's really bothering you?" Mark considered brushing it off, letting the moment pass like they had so many times lately. But the frustration, the gnawing suspicion, it all bubbled to the surface. "You tell me, Courtney. You're the one acting like you've got something to hide." Her eyes flashed with anger, but there was something else there too. "Guilt? I'm not hiding anything. I need some space, okay? To explore new things, figure out what I want." Mark felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. "What you want? We've been married for 15 years. We have a daughter. What more do you need to figure out?" Courtney's voice grew cold, defensive. "Mark, I love you, but you're not my owner. I want some space to explore new things." Is that so wrong? The words hit him like a slap. He stared at her. This woman he thought he knew better than anyone, suddenly a stranger. Without another word, he turned and climbed the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. Days passed, the tension in the house growing thicker with each passing hour. Mark threw himself into his work, staying late at the office to avoid the oppressive silence at home. Courtney continued her clandestine phone activity, growing more defensive with each passing day. It all came to a head that weekend. Mark stood in the kitchen, methodically chopping vegetables for a salad. The rhythmic thud of the knife against the cutting board did little to calm his frayed nerves. Courtney bustled around him, setting the table for their lunch guest. "Gavin should be here any minute," she said, adjusting a fork for the third time. "Are you almost done with that?" Mark's grip tightened on the knife. Gavin Turner, his best friend since college, the best man at their wedding. The thought of him coming over, sitting at their table, laughing and joking like everything was normal, it made Mark's stomach churn. The doorbell rang, jolting him from his dark thoughts. Courtney practically sprinted to answer it. Mark listened to the muffled greetings, the sound of Gavin's deep laugh. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "Mark, my man!" Gavin's booming voice filled the kitchen as he strode in, all easy smiles and casual confidence. "How's it going, buddy?" Mark turned, forcing a smile as he clasped Gavin's hand in a firm handshake. "Can't complain. How about you? Still making the big bucks as a financial consultant?" Gavin laughed, running a hand through his expertly styled hair. "You know how it is. Market's volatile, but we're hanging in there." His eyes darted to Courtney, who was busying herself at the stove. "Need any help, Court?" "I've got it." Mark cut in, perhaps a bit too sharply. "Why don't you two head out to the patio? I'll bring everything out in a minute." The meal passed in a blur of forced small talk and strained laughter. Mark watched as Gavin regaled them with stories from his latest business trip, noting the way Courtney hung on his every word. The way her eyes lit up when he spoke, the casual touches that lingered just a moment too long. As they finished eating, Courtney stood abruptly. "Mark, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Inside." He nodded, following her into the house. In the kitchen, she turned to face him, her expression a mix of determination and fear. "Mark, I think we need to talk about our marriage." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "What about it?" Courtney took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. About us, about what I want in life. And I think we should have an open marriage." The words hit Mark like a physical blow. He stared at her, disbelief and rage warring within him. "An open marriage," he repeated flatly. She nodded, words spilling out in a rush. "I feel like I need more in my life, Mark. It's not that I don't love you, I do. But I think this could help us reconnect, bring some excitement back." "Excitement?" Mark cut her off, his voice low and dangerous. "Is that what this is about? You're bored, so you want to sleep with other people?" Courtney flinched at his tone. "It's not like that. I just think no." The word came out as a growl. "I won't share what's mine." He pushed past her, heading for the patio door. Courtney grabbed his arm, her eyes pleading. "Mark, please. Just think about it. This could be for the best for both of us." He shook off her hand, fixed her with a cold stare. "There's nothing to think about. You made your choice, Courtney. Now you get to live with it." Without another word, he stepped back outside, plastering on a smile for Gavin's benefit. But inside, something had shifted. The hurt, the betrayal. It all crystallized into a cold, hard resolve. They wanted to play games? Fine. But Mark Stone didn't lose. And he sure as hell didn't forgive. As Gavin left that evening, Mark retreated to his home office, mind racing. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that Courtney was already having an affair with Gavin. The pieces all fit the secretive behavior, the lingering looks, the sudden desire for an open marriage. He sat at his desk, staring blankly at the computer screen. Part of him wanted to confront them both, to unleash the rage and betrayal boiling inside him. But another part, a colder, more calculating part, saw an opportunity. If Courtney wanted her freedom so badly, he'd give it to her. But on his terms, he'd play along with her little charade, let her think she was in control. And when the moment was right, he'd pull the rug out from under her, leaving her with nothing. Mark's heart hardened, his resolve solidifying. He'd protect Allison, make sure she was taken care of. But Courtney? She'd made her bed. Now she could lie in it alone. With a grim smile, Mark began to plan. The game was on, and he intended to win. The next week passed in a haze of forced normalcy and unspoken tension. Mark threw himself into his work, staying late at the office to avoid the suffocating silence at home. Courtney continued her clandestine phone activity, growing more restless with each passing day. It was a Wednesday evening when she finally broached the subject again. Mark sat at the dining room table, laptop open in front of him as he pored over blueprints for a new development. He barely glanced up as Courtney entered the room. "Mark," her voice was hesitant. "Can we talk?" He leaned back in his chair, fixing her with a steady gaze. "About what?" Courtney took a deep breath. "About what I said last week. About opening up our marriage." Mark's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice level. "I thought I made my position on that pretty clear." I know. She moved closer, perching on the edge of the table. "But I've been thinking about it a lot, and I really believe this could be good for us. For both of us." He studied her face, noting the flush in her cheeks, the nervous energy radiating off her. "Both of us," he repeated flatly. "Or just you?" Courtney's eyes flashed with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "That's not fair, Mark. I'm trying to be honest here, to find a way for us to move forward." "Move forward," Mark echoed, a bitter laugh escaping him. "Is that what you call it?" She reached out, laying a hand on his arm. He resisted the urge to pull away. "I love you, Mark. That hasn't changed. But I need more. The chance to explore, to figure out who I am outside of just being a wife and mother." Mark stood abruptly, shrugging off her touch. He paced the length of the dining room, mind racing. Every instinct screamed at him to shut this down, to tell her exactly where she could shove her exploration. But another part of him, a colder, more calculating part, saw an opportunity. He turned to face her, his expression carefully neutral. "You really want this?" Courtney nodded, hope blooming in her eyes. "I do. I think it could bring us closer, help us reconnect." Mark was silent for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and controlled. "All right. If this is what you want, we can try it." The relief on Courtney's face was palpable. She stood, moving towards him with arms outstretched. "Thank you, Mark. I promise this will be good for us. We can set ground rules, make sure we're both comfortable." He held up a hand, stopping her. "Not now. I need some time to process this. We can talk details later." Courtney nodded, practically vibrating with barely contained excitement. Of course. Take all the time you need. I love you, Mark." He watched as she practically floated out of the room, already reaching for her phone. As soon as she was gone, the mask slipped. Mark's face hardened, his eyes cold as ice. She thought she had won, that she could have her cake and eat it too. Little did she know, she had just handed him everything he needed to destroy her. The next few days passed in a blur of furtive phone calls and hushed conversations. Mark watched it all with a detached sort of curiosity, like a scientist observing specimens in a lab. He noted the way Courtney's eyes lit up when her phone chimed, the spring in her step as she bustled around the house. It was Friday evening when Courtney dropped the bomb. Mark sat in his home office, ostensibly working on reports but really finalizing the details of his plan. He looked up as Courtney knocked softly on the open door. "Hey," she said, a nervous energy radiating off her. "Can we talk for a minute?" Mark leaned back in his chair, gesturing for her to enter. "Sure. What's on your mind?" Courtney perched on the edge of his desk, hands fidgeting in her lap. "So, you know how we talked about exploring new things?" At his nod, she continued. "Well, I've been thinking, I'd like to take a little trip next week, just for a few days." Mark's eyebrows rose. "A trip? Where to?" "Oh, just up to the mountains. There's this great little bed and breakfast I've heard about. Perfect for some landscape photography." She paused, not quite meeting his eyes. "I was thinking of asking a friend to come along. For company." It took every ounce of self-control. Mark possessed not to laugh out loud. Did she really think he was that stupid? That he couldn't see right through her pathetic attempts at deception? Instead, he nodded slowly, as if considering. A friend, huh? Anyone I know? Courtney's cheeks flushed. Just someone from my photography group. You wouldn't know them. I see. Mark was silent for a long moment, watching her squirm under his gaze. Finally, he spoke. Well, if this is something you feel you need to do, then go ahead. The relief on Courtney's face was almost comical. Really? You're okay with this? Mark shrugged, the picture of nonchalance. We agreed to try this open marriage thing, right? Might as well dive in. Courtney beamed, leaning in to press a quick kiss to his cheek. Thank you for understanding, Mark. This means a lot to me. She hopped off the desk, practically skipping towards the door. I'll start packing. As soon as she was gone, Mark's facade crumbled. His hands clenched into fists, knuckles white with the effort of containing his rage. He knew exactly who she was going with, and it wasn't some random photography friend. It was Gavin, his best friend, the man he had trusted with everything. Mark took a deep breath, forcing himself to relax. This was all part of the plan. Let them think they had won. Let them get comfortable in their betrayal. It would make the fall that much harder when he finally pulled the rug out from under them. The day of Courtney's departure arrived. Mark stood in the driveway, watching as she loaded her bags into her car. She seemed almost giddy, barely able to contain her excitement. You sure you don't want me to drive you to the airport? Mark asked, playing the role of the supportive husband to perfection. Courtney shook her head. No, it's fine. I'm meeting my friend there. We'll drive up together. Mark nodded, stepping forward to give her a brief hug. Have a good trip. Be safe. As he watched her car disappear down the street, Mark allowed himself a small, grim smile. Let the games begin. The moment Courtney was gone, Mark sprang into action. He pulled out his phone, dialing a number he had memorized days ago. Erica? It's Mark Stone. I need your help with something urgent. Erica, a sharp-witted attorney Mark had hired in secret, listened intently as he laid out his plan. Are you sure about this, Mark? Once we set this in motion, there's no going back. Mark's voice was cold, determined. I'm sure. She made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Over the next few days, Mark worked tirelessly. He changed the locks on the house, secured a temporary restraining order against both Courtney and Gavin, and worked closely with Allison to ensure she understood what was happening. Dad! Allison's voice was small, uncertain. Is Mom really not coming back? Mark knelt down, meeting his daughter's eyes. Your mom made some choices that hurt our family, sweetheart. But I promise you, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to get through this together, okay? Allison nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Can I write her a letter? To tell her how I feel? Of course you can, Mark said, pulling her into a hug. That's a great idea. As Allison worked on her letter, Mark finalized the last details of his plan. He had gathered evidence of Courtney's affair, documented her abandonment of the family, and prepared a rock-solid case for full custody of Allison. The day of Courtney's return arrived. Mark stood on the front porch, Erica by his side, as a taxi pulled into the driveway. Courtney stepped out, her face flushed with happiness. That happiness turned to confusion, then shock, as she saw Mark and the unfamiliar woman waiting for her. Mark! Courtney called out, her voice uncertain. What's going on? Who is this? Mark's voice was cold, devoid of emotion. Courtney, this is Erica. My attorney. Courtney's face paled. Attorney? I don't understand. Erica stepped forward, her professional demeanor masking a slight sense of triumph. Mrs. Stone, I'm here to serve you with these documents. She held out a thick envelope. This includes a restraining order, divorce papers, and a letter from your daughter. Courtney's hands shook as she took the envelope. Restraining order? Mark, what is this? Mark's eyes were hard, unforgiving. You wanted freedom, Courtney. Now you have it. You're no longer welcome here. But we agreed. Courtney's voice rose, panic setting in. We said we'd try an open marriage. Mark laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. And you believe that? You really thought I'd just sit back and let you destroy our family? Let you and Gavin make a fool of me? Courtney's face crumpled. Gavin? How did you? It doesn't matter. Mark cut her off. What matters is that you made your choice. Now you get to live with it. Alone. Tears streamed down Courtney's face. Please, Mark. Let me explain. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out, Mark said, his voice flat. It's over, Courtney. You threw away 15 years of marriage for a fling with my best friend. Did you really think there'd be no consequences? Courtney tried to step towards the house, but Erica blocked her path. I'm afraid you can't enter the premises, Mrs. Stone. The restraining order is effective immediately. But where am I supposed to go? Courtney's voice was small, broken. Mark shrugged, unmoved by her tears. That's not my problem anymore. You wanted space to explore, remember? Well, now you have all the space in the world. As Courtney stood there, shell-shocked and sobbing, Mark turned and walked back into the house. He closed the door behind him, leaning against it for a moment. The weight of what he had just done settled over him, but he felt no regret. Only a grim satisfaction. Allison appeared at the top of the stairs, her eyes wide and uncertain. Dad, is it over? Mark nodded, forcing a small smile for his daughter's sake. Yes, sweetheart. It's over. Come on, let's go make some dinner. As they moved towards the kitchen, Mark allowed himself to breathe. The worst was over. Now came the hard part, rebuilding their lives, just the two of them. But he was ready for the challenge. Courtney had underestimated him, thought she could play him for a fool. She had forgotten one crucial thing Mark Stone didn't lose. And he sure as hell didn't forgive. Months passed, and the dust began to settle on the wreckage of Mark's former life. He threw himself into his work with renewed vigor, climbing the corporate ladder at his construction firm with a single-minded determination that both impressed and unnerved his colleagues. One crisp autumn morning, Mark stood in the kitchen of his new home, a modern, spacious house just a few miles from their old neighborhood. He sipped his coffee, watching as Allison bustled around, gathering her school things. Dad! Allison's voice broke through his thoughts. Can I ask you something? Mark set down his mug, giving his daughter his full attention. Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind? Allison hesitated, fidgeting with the straps of her backpack. Do you ever miss Mom? The question hit Mark like a punch to the gut, but he kept his face carefully neutral. Your mom made choices that hurt our family, Allie. But that doesn't change the fact that she's your mother. It's okay if you miss her. But do you? Allison pressed. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. I miss the family we were sometimes, but we can't go back. We can only move forward. Allison nodded, her young face serious. I get it. Sometimes I wonder if she misses us. Mark pulled his daughter into a hug, his heart aching for the pain she'd been put through. I'm sure she does, sweetheart. But remember, we're going to be okay. You and me, we're a team, right? Allison's smile was small but genuine. Right? Thanks, Dad. As he watched her head out to catch the school bus, Mark's resolve hardened once again. They were better off without Courtney. He'd make sure Allison never doubted that. Later that day, Mark sat in his office, poring over blueprints for a new development project. A soft knock at the door drew his attention. Come in, he called, not looking up from his work. Mr. Stone? A familiar voice made him glance up. Erica, the lawyer who had helped him through the divorce, stood in the doorway. Do you have a moment? Mark leaned back in his chair, gesturing for her to enter. Erica, what brings you by? Is there a problem with the divorce settlement? Erica shook her head, taking a seat across from him. No, nothing like that. I actually wanted to discuss a personal matter, if that's all right. Mark's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded. Of course. What's on your mind? Erica hesitated for a moment, then spoke. I was wondering if you'd like to grab dinner sometime. Not as lawyer and client, but as friends. Maybe more. The invitation caught Mark off guard. He studied Erica's face, noting the slight flush in her cheeks, the way her eyes met his unflinchingly. She was attractive, intelligent, and she'd been there for him during the darkest period of his life. But was he ready for this? Erica, Mark began, then paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm flattered, truly, but I'm not sure I'm ready for anything complicated right now. Erica nodded, her professional demeanor slipping back into place. I understand completely. I hope I haven't made things awkward between us. Mark shook his head, offering a small smile. Not at all. I appreciate your honesty. And who knows? Maybe someday, when things are less raw. As Erica left his office, Mark found himself lost in thought. The idea of moving on, of finding happiness with someone new, it wasn't as horrifying as it once might have been. But he wasn't there yet. His focus had to remain on Allison and on rebuilding their lives. Weeks turned into months, and life settled into a new rhythm for Mark and Allison. They found comfort in their routines, in the quiet evenings spent together doing homework or watching movies. But the specter of Courtney's betrayal still lingered, casting a long shadow over their attempts at normalcy. It was a crisp Saturday morning when the past came knocking, quite literally. Mark was in the garage, tinkering with his car, when he heard the doorbell ring. Wiping his hands on a rag, he made his way to the front door, freezing when he saw who stood on the other side. Courtney. She looked different, thinner, her once vibrant hair now dull and lifeless. But it was the look in her eyes that struck Mark the most. Gone was the carefree spark, replaced by a haunted, desperate gaze. "Mark," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" For a moment, Mark considered slamming the door in her face. But curiosity got the better of him. "What do you want, Courtney?" She flinched at his cold tone, but pressed on. I made a terrible mistake, Mark. I see that now. I was wondering if maybe we could try again." Mark stared at her, disbelief warring with rage in his chest. "Try again," he repeated, his voice dangerously low. "You throw away 15 years of marriage, betray me with my best friend, abandon our daughter, and now you want to try again?" Tears welled in Courtney's eyes. "I know I hurt you, Mark, both of you, but I've changed. I've realized what's truly important. Please just give me a chance to explain." "Explain what?" Mark cut her off, his control slipping. "How you decided our family wasn't enough for you. How you lied to my face, day after day. Or maybe you'd like to explain how you broke our daughter's heart." Courtney's tears spilled over. "I'm sorry, Mark. I'm so sorry. I was selfish and stupid, and I've regretted it every day since. Please, if you ever loved me, don't." Mark's voice was like ice. "Don't you dare use that against me. You lost the right to talk about love the moment you chose Gavin over your family." "Gavin's gone," Courtney said, her voice small and broken. "He left me. I have nothing, Mark. No one." For a brief moment, Mark felt a flicker of pity, but he squashed it ruthlessly. "That's not my problem, Courtney. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it." "Dad!" Allison's voice came from behind him. "Who's at the door?" Mark turned to see his daughter, standing in the hallway, her eyes wide as she recognized her mother. Courtney's face lit up. "Allie! Oh, sweetheart, I've missed you so much." "Stop right there," Mark growled, stepping between Courtney and Allison. "You don't get to waltz back in here and act like nothing happened." Allison moved closer, her voice small but steady. "Why are you here, Mom?" Courtney's smile faltered. I wanted to see you, honey, to tell you how sorry I am." "Sorry?" Allison's voice cracked. "You left us. You chose someone else over us. And now you're sorry." Mark felt a surge of pride at his daughter's strength. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder as she continued. "I wrote you a letter, you know," Allison said, tears shining in her eyes. "When you first left, I poured my heart out, told you how much you hurt me. Did you even read it?" Courtney's face crumpled. "Oh, Allie, of course I read it. It broke my heart." "No," Allison cut her off. "You don't get to say that. You broke my heart. You broke our family. And now we don't need you anymore." With that, Allison turned and ran back into the house. Mark watched her go, his heart aching for the pain his daughter had endured. He turned back to Courtney, who stood there looking shell-shocked. "I think you should leave now," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Mark, please," Courtney begged. "Don't do this. We can work it out, go to counseling." "There's nothing to work out," Mark said firmly. "We're done, Courtney. We've moved on. You should too." With that, he closed the door, shutting Courtney out of their lives once and for all. He leaned against it for a moment, taking a deep breath to steady himself. Then he went to find Allison, to comfort her and reassure her that they would be okay. Because they would be. They had each other, and that was enough. As the weeks passed, life slowly returned to normal, or at least their new version of normal. Mark threw himself into his work with renewed vigor, determined to provide the best possible life for Allison. And slowly but surely, he found himself healing. It was on a warm spring evening that Mark found himself sitting on the back porch, watching the sunset. Allison was at a friend's house for a sleepover, and the house felt oddly quiet without her presence. A soft knock at the front door broke through his reverie. Curious, Mark made his way through the house, wondering who could be visiting at this hour. He opened the door to find Erica standing there, a hesitant smile on her face. "Hi, Mark. I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Mark shook his head, stepping back to let her in. "Not at all. What brings you by?" Erica took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said a few months ago, about not being ready for anything complicated." Mark nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. "I remember." "Well," Erica continued, her eyes meeting his. "I was wondering if maybe you've had some time to heal, to move forward." Mark studied her face, noting the hope in her eyes, the slight nervousness in her posture. And for the first time in a long time, he felt a spark of something he thought he'd lost forever, possibility. "You know," he said slowly, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I think maybe I have." Erica's face lit up with a brilliant smile. "In that case, Mr. Stone, would you like to have dinner with me?" Mark chuckled, feeling lighter than he had in months. "I'd like that very much, Ms. Carter." As they walked out into the warm evening air, Mark felt a sense of peace settle over him. The past was behind him, the pain of betrayal fading into a dull ache. Ahead lay a future full of possibilities, for him, for Allison, and maybe, just maybe, for a new kind of happiness. He glanced at Erica, her profile illuminated by the setting sun, and allowed himself to hope. Because Mark Stone was a survivor. He'd weathered the storm of betrayal and come out stronger on the other side. And now, finally, he was ready to embrace whatever the future might hold. As they drove off into the twilight, Mark felt a sense of closure. Courtney had made her choice, and now he was making his. Life would go on, new chapters would be written, and this time, he'd make damn sure the story had a happy ending.